Good evening, Wakefield, and welcome to the Town Council meeting for January 13th, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. Item number 2 on the agenda is...
6:30.
I'm sorry, 6:30 p.m. Item number 2 on the agenda is executive session. We ended up not needing executive session this evening, so we'll go right into the open meeting now at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Item number 3 on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I have the great honor tonight of introducing an incredibly dedicated public servant, Rich Greif. Rich has been on the Human Rights Commission since its inception in 2015. He currently serves as its chair. In addition, Rich was formerly on the board of directors for the Wakefield Food Pantry. He is the communications director for Make-A-Wish, and he also teaches at Boston University. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rich, and if you could lead us, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rich, and we'll be hearing more from Rich this evening, including some really important activities that are coming up to commemorate Martin Luther King Day as well next week. Item number 4 on the agenda is attendance. I see that we have 6 counselors here this evening, the absence of Counselor May, who is caught up at work and unable to be here, unfortunately. Item number 5 on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, both from December 9th of 2019. The first is the executive session town council meeting minutes. These would not be in the packets that are online, given the nature of the meeting, but they have been distributed amongst all the counselors. So with that, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the executive session meeting minutes from December 9th, 2019.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Counselor Smith-Galvin. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the December 9th, 2019 executive session meeting minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 5B on the agenda is the approval of the December 9th, 2019 regular town council meeting minutes. Those are in the packets that are available online. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Counselor Smith-Galvin. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the December 9th, 2019 regular town council meeting minutes. All those counselors in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item number 6 on the agenda is public engagement. This is the opportunity for members of the community to address the council with any issues, concerns, or ideas they may have. We ask that the presentation be limited to 3 minutes, and there is also an opportunity for additional engagement between members of the community and the town council, and in my discretion, we can also extend the amount of time. With that, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who's signed in for public engagement this evening?
Yes, Chairman, we have Bob McLaughlin.
Good evening. If you could introduce yourself, provide your address.
Yeah, good evening. Bob McLaughlin, 376 Water Street. Yeah, and good evening, Chairman and fellow councilors here. I was reading the Boston Globe yesterday, and I came across this article that was the Globe local, and they interviewed 6 new mayors in the region. And okay, we're on. And okay, and one of the mayors from Braintree. They had a little caption underneath each one of their pictures before it gets into the big story. Said his first priority is to find and create a new master plan that will provide a blueprint for how we want to move forward with development and many other issues. And it got me to thinking that our master plan that we currently have right now, we started it, I was on the planning board at the time. Paul actually took it over. I was the chairman. Way back when, back around 1999, 2000 or so, 2001, right in that area. And it got me to thinking that our master plan probably, not all of it has to be updated, but components of it probably should be, we should take a look at it. That's up to the planning board, of course, but I just wanted to bring it up tonight. Just a little background on our master plan. Our first one was 1925. That was really unique, and I made a copy for Steve. I gave you a copy one time, but I think I'll make a copy for you guys. It's really cool. And then the next master plan was 1961, and then the next one was 1987, and then we have the current one right now. So we're probably in line to probably take a peek at the one that we have right now, given the fact, that our town is, in my opinion, is pretty well built out. Not a lot of big subdivisions going in. Of course, we have tons of them that were in the past, but we're totally into that redevelopment portion of our history of Wakefield. It's pretty obvious that we've got a lot of tear downs going on, a lot of condos going up and apartments going up. So it's probably, I think it's probably a good time to take a peek at it and, and see where we're going. That's what a master plan is. It's an outline for where this town, what the direction of the town wants to be going forward for the next, at least, in the vicinity, maybe 15 years, probably, something like that. And I did have one question, you don't have to answer it, but I was thinking, I know that a lot of the building that's going around here is in relationship to the commuter line going through Wakefield. And so my question is, and you guys can look into it later, is whether anybody's ever contacted the MBTA, the commuter line, whoever runs that, to see what the capacity is on these trains, because the train starts up in Haverhill and it's choo-chooing all the way through into Boston, and of course, we're not the only one that's doing a build-out for that, for that service. I was talking to a train friend of mine, and he says 1 engine, 6 cars. So every time you want to add a bunch of cars, you got to buy another engine, and they're like $3-4 million. So the question is when is the capacity for these trains full, getting from point A to point B, going down the road, and whether the commuter line is going to be able to take that type of the increase of passengers. Not only through Wakefield, but for that whole line going through here. So it's just a question that, if we haven't looked into, somebody might want to. And I think that's all I have. I can go for like an hour and a half if guys have one thing, if anybody has nothing to do and would like to go through, this is online, and thanks for putting this up there, okay. Whoever's doing the web, is it Jen that's doing the web? Yeah, anyway, she must have spent a couple of minutes. But anyway, this is the preservation plan. This was adopted when I was the chair of it, and it is absolutely an excellent document. And there's a lot of really cool stuff in here, and it's a great read. Take a couple of minutes, but you might want to take a peek at it. But I think that's all I have, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lynch, really appreciate it. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else who's signed in?
No, that's it.
Seeing none, then the next item of business is item number 7. This is appointments. We actually have several appointments to make this evening, the first of which is item 7A. This is an appointment onto the Human Rights Commission to fill the remainder of a 3-year term that would expire April 30th, 2021. So with that, I'll invite any members of the Human Rights Commission.
Good evening. Thank you for having us, and obviously for your support of the Human Rights Commission. Before you discuss the appointments, I just wanted to bring up this coming Monday is the 4th celebration that Wakefield's had for MLK Day. This year we're actually calling it MLK and Coretta Scott King celebration. We have a really great program planned. We have the CEO of Metco, Millie Arberger-Thomas, is coming, which is really great. It's the 50th anniversary and celebration of Metco overall as a program, so we're really actually very honored that she was able to come to Wakefield on MLK Day for part of that celebration. We'll again be doing the MLK Service Awards to a community resident, organization, and student. We'll have lots of great performances by the Wakefield Community Choir, Galvin Middle School students, high school students, and new this year is that any resident can participate in is we'll be doing a service project to put together cold weather service packages for anyone that might need them within town. Either a town hall or the savings bank, anyone can donate a number of different cold weather items, whether they're socks, mittens, scarves, hats, whatever you might be able to have that's either new or gently used, or backpacks. And we'll be putting those together as a service project at the Galvin Middle School on Monday at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Certainly. It's always a great event.
Thank you.
And I know a lot of work goes into it as well, certainly. So this evening we're here because we have this vacancy to fill. The Human Rights Commission has interviewed, we have in total 3 applicants. Human Rights Commission has interviewed all 3 applicants. The write-up summaries, and thank you to Jennifer Betcher for doing as she has. The summaries are included in the packets that we have all received and are available online. And if you had anything else to offer, Rich, about the three applicants, and any words from the Human Rights Commission relative to them.
No, I mean, they're all strong applicants. Obviously, we're looking for a range of diversity and skills. I think the one thing that's sort of unique about our group is that we do put on a lot of events, and we engage with a lot of groups, both inside and outside of Wakefield. So looking for someone that not only can bring diversity from a personal or professional perspective, but also can be accessible to be able to help plan some of those events and engage with other groups. We're part of the Massachusetts Human Rights Coalition as well, so we participate in events at the State House and beyond. We attend monthly meetings. So we're really looking for people that obviously can bring a unique, diverse perspective, but also can be an active participant in the work that we do, which is why we expanded and added an additional role on the commission to be able to help serve that capacity.
Great, thank you. I think one of the unanimous decisions we always make on this council is, these are always hard decisions to make. We always have great applicants, and we never have enough spots for all the great applicants we get. And I think this appointment is no exception, certainly. With that, I would entertain a motion if someone wanted to nominate someone, and then we can open it up for discussion. Vice Chair Santos.
Based on a lot of what you said, Rich, and again, they're all excellent candidates, but the engagement part of it, working within the school system, strong education, I would nominate Chi-Chi Canavan, especially being a mom to students who went through the system, but working in the system herself. So what she could bring, how she could collaborate with other departments in our town, I think would be fabulous. And again, all the candidates seem great.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. So the motion is for the appointment of Chi-Chi Canavan to the Human Rights Commission to fill out the remainder of the term being vacated, made by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Chines. So with that, I'll open it up to any discussion. Councilor Butt.
So I want to echo that all three candidates were great. This is such a great problem that we've had recently of all great candidates. And I'm going to throw it back to you, Rich, that we've done to other chairs as they come before us, is that whoever doesn't get appointment, making opportunity for them. So I regularly go to Human Rights Commission meetings, and they are open to anyone. They are publicized, and you guys have been really great about using people who aren't necessarily commission members to help you plan all the great events that you do, like Monday's upcoming events. So just my ask of the chairs to think about whoever doesn't get appointed, ways to continue working with them.
Absolutely. We are not shy about reaching out to other
Yes.
people to help get involved on committees.
Councilor Chines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo the comments that Councilor Butt and Councilor Santos made. I also do want to thank Rich, you and the commission for actually going through the process of doing interviews with the folks that apply. I think it's really helpful to see that context, and I think, for a commission like this, to be able to have that opportunity to really talk about the different visions that people would bring onto the commission, I think is really helpful. So I know that's an extra step that, you and your colleagues take, but do appreciate the effort that goes into that.
Thank you. No, it's important to us any way we can to get to know the different candidates.
And is there any candidate that stood out to the commission that would fill a particular hole or void that you have currently? Did you have any preference as a commission for one?
No, I mean, I think they all bring, a diverse range of skills that we need. I sort of point to, we need people that can really be active, because we're not just come to a meeting, once a month. We're really a much more active group. We have a number of committees outside of our main meeting, and we participate, as I said, in a number of other groups. So we need people who can really be active participants, as well as whatever diverse personal or professional experience they bring.
Great. Further discussion? All right, seeing none, then we have a motion before you that's been seconded, and that would be a motion for the appointment of Chi-Chi Canavan to fill out the remainder of this term that would expire April 30th of 2021. So all of those in favor?
Aye.
The vote is 6-0. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Rich, for your work. Thank you to the HRC,
Thank you,
and congratulations to Ms. Canavan as well.
Thank you.
And we encourage the other applicants to continue to be involved, as we've said here, because very impressive resumes, and everyone has a lot to offer, certainly. We'll next move on to item 7B. This is the appointment of election workers. We have the opportunity and obligation to appoint applicants for election workers and town meeting workers. We have 10 applicants that have submitted. All of their information is contained in the packets we have been provided and online. And unless anyone has objection, I would entertain voting in the slate. To be clear, then once these applicants are approved by town council, the town clerk would then follow up with them and work out logistics about what involvement they would have in any elections, town meetings, et cetera. So with that, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the slate, and I should say the slate includes Mary Eldridge, Russell Picelli, Mary Frances Picelli, Patrick O'Keefe, E. Marcia Scanlon, Christine DeBicari, Linda Carr, Mary Ann Sullivan, Michael DeLaurie, and Charles Gear. Okay, moved by Councilor Chine, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, the motion before you then would be the approval of the slate of 10 election and town meeting workers that have been named. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the vote is 6-0. The motion carries unanimously. Item 7C is the appointment of a member of the Retirement Board. The Retirement Board is a 5-member board, and we have the opportunity this evening to appoint one applicant to the board. This is the town council appointment. The Retirement Board works a bit differently than some of the other boards in terms of appointing. Some members need to be part of the system, others one needs to be appointed by other members, one needs to be appointed by the town council. The town accountant is also involved on the board, so there's a lot of detail here, but the bottom line is we have one applicant, whom I think we all know pretty well, and that applicant is Sherry Dalton, our Madam Clerk, who has applied to be on this retirement board. Her supporting materials have all been part of the packet and submitted here. There is also a letter of support and endorsement from the executive director of the retirement board, and she is here, as is Kevin Gill, our town accountant, in the event the town council had any questions for either of them.
Did she get her materials in on time?
Just
checking.
She claims she did,
Just checking.
but it's a little bit self-serving, so I don't know. But yes, you did. And everyone has had a sufficient chance to review, I assume. Okay, so with that, I will entertain a motion for the appointment of Sherry Dalton to the Retirement Board.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Any discussion? Councilor Chines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a question. First of all, I think Ms. Dalton would be a great addition to the Retirement Board. I wasn't clear sort of which appointments or which positions on the board currently were which appointments, and so would it be possible maybe for us to review that just so that I understand kind of who's who and where everyone came from? Obviously, Mr. Gill's appointment as town accountant makes sense, but
He's
I
ex
didn't.
officio.
Yep, but I wasn't clear. So this is a town council appointee.
This is for the town council.
I assume Mr. Albert was selected by the employees.
He was an elected.
Okay,
Elected.
and then Mr. Sherman.
By the rest of the body.
Yep.
Okay, okay. So, got it. So then there's effectively still one open slot
The
for the
another
other
elected.
elected.
Another
Okay,
elected, yes, that's correct.
great, thank you.
Sure. Further questions, comments? All right, seeing none, the motion before you then would be the appointment of Sherry Dalton to the Retirement Board. All those members in favor?
Aye.
Vote is 6-0. The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the public hearing. This is set for 7:05, and so we will not have this hearing take place until 7:05, but whatever matter we're working on, we will stop at 7:05 because that's when the hearing was scheduled and noticed. So with that, we'll go on to item number 9, and this is actually the introduction of Jen DiGiambattista. Ms. DiGiambattista is actually on the Town Hall Budget Subcommittee. She chairs that committee, and part of what we are looking to do, I had raised this a few months ago, we're looking to have a better, more collaborative relationship with the Finance Committee when it comes to the budgeting process. I met with the Finance Committee over the summer, along with Mr. Mayo, to talk about ways that we can improve the budgeting process, and we can be, it can be more collaborative. With that, we've invited Jan, as we will all of the other point people relative to these budgets, to offer the Finance Committee's perspective early on in the process, so that we're not making a decision in a vacuum, but rather have the Finance Committee's input, which I think is really important for us in making these decisions. So with that, I'll introduce Madam Chairwoman, as well as Mr. Gill, our town accountant. And we can just move on to item 10, which is our fiscal year 2021 budgets. We have a number of them tonight. All of them fall under what are called town hall budgets. So they'll be self-explanatory as we go through them, but we'll take each of them one by one and go through them. Good evening, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
It's really great to have this. After our tri-board meeting, we spoke a lot about, the need to have more collaboration on the budgeting process. I know that we spoke, going back over the summer, and this is just the logical next step. So I'm really excited about this opportunity for us to hear from Finance Committee early on. So with that, perhaps we could just take the budgets one at a time. The first one is item 10A, which is the legal budget.
Yes, we have met on January 9th to go over these overall budgets. And with the legal budget, there was an increase of salary for Town Council Tom Mullen, but most of the other line items were level funded from the previous year.
Mr. Gill, do you have anything to add to that?
No, as in prior years, as Jan has said, personal services, there was a 3% increase. Other main expenses within this budget, there's an outside professional services line item for $60,000, which is used mainly for labor attorneys and other outside professional experts. The books and publication line item, $6,200, which is used to upkeep the town's legal library. The total budget request is $187,677.
I should say that offline, members of this body have had the opportunity to review the budgets, ask any questions they may have had in advance of tonight's meeting. And so the absence of questions doesn't indicate that we haven't studied them thoroughly. Many of them may have been asked in the meantime. And as the budget process, the history of it is, we normally get the easy ones, and then they become increasingly more difficult as the weeks go on. So these are meant to be a little more straightforward in nature. With that, does anyone from the council have any questions about the legal budget as presented? All right, seeing none, then I will entertain a motion for the approval of the legal budget for the fiscal year 2021 year.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the legal budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 10B is budget number 11. This is the election expense.
Yes, this budget, there was an increase this year. I believe it was 17.5 overall, but that is because there are additional elections in this coming year. So, depending upon the need, they anticipated for a few more, including the presidential election as well. So that has gone up this year, and as in years past, it will decrease in next year if the elections are lower, which, not being a presidential election year, we anticipate that it will.
Mr. Gill, anything to add?
Like Janet mentioned, there's an increase in fiscal '21 of one additional election. Next year, we have a primary in September, we have the presidential in November, and then we have the local election in April of '21. The estimated cost of one election is $12,325. Since we've gone to one polling place, we're saving about $2,500 per election. The total budget request is $36,975.
Does Finance Committee have any other comment on this budget?
No, I have no comment.
All right, so the budget before us is budget number 11, the election expense. First, do we have any questions? Counselor Chines.
Just a quick question. I assume as we look at the fiscal 2020 where we budgeted $25,000, we are going to have a special primary election
Correct.
for half the community coming up. I assume that'll be a reserve fund
Correct.
transfer at the end of the year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Counselor Smith Galvin.
And maybe I'm just hearing rumors, but maybe Steve knows this. Does the state pay for that primary?
It's possible we'll get some money back. I don't
Okay.
think we'll cover the whole thing.
Okay.
So
But we'll look
that's
into
why
that, and then
figure
any
out-
difference
We'll figure out what
we
we
need.
need for the reserve
Okay.
fund, unless we can move it from other elections.
Okay, thank you.
Haven't heard about that election, have you? All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 11. This is the election expense budget for fiscal year 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Counselor Chines. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the election expense budget, budget number 11 for 2021. All those in favor? Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Third budget, 10C, is budget number 12, the Finance Committee budget.
Yes, this budget is level funded for this year.
I would hope so.
So there are no changes for this year.
Mr. Gill?
Main expenses within this budget, there's a line item, the cost to print the recommendation book used at town meeting, $2,800. And we also pay half the town's MMA dues where the finance committee is part of the MMA, $3,400. The total budget request is $7,060.
Thank you. Anything further on the Finance Committee side?
No, nothing.
We thank the Finance Committee for their fiscal responsibility.
You're welcome.
So with that, any questions of the body? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion then for the approval of budget number 12. This is the Finance Committee budget for fiscal year 2021.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Donaco, seconded by Counselor Smith Galvin. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the Finance Committee budget for 2021, number 12. All those in favor? Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Next budget is item 10D. This is budget number 13, the Conservation Commission budget.
Yes, this budget, there was an increase, but that was only due to personnel and contractual services. The rest was level funded.
Mr. Gill?
The conservation budget, the increase was in personal services, $1,145. This consists of two people working part-time, each working 10 hours per week. This budget is also offset by available funds, which is the wetland filing fees. That's going to remain at $3,000 in fiscal '21. Total budget request is $46,902, with $43,902 coming from tax levy and $3,000 from available funds.
Any further comment from
I
Finance
have no
Committee?
comments on this budget.
Any questions of the council? All right, seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 13, the Conservation Commission budget.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the Conservation Commission budget for fiscal year 2021. All those in favor?
Okay.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Next budget is item number 10E. This is budget number 15, the Board of Appeals.
Okay, this budget, there was an increase of $2,500 for anticipated appeals for the budget year 2021. And there were 7,768 receipts and 28 hearings so far for this season, this year.
This budget, the budget is based on 50 hearings per the Board of Appeals. The total cost per hearing is $550. That breaks down between advertising, the clerk, the chairman, board members, postage and reproduction. The revenue that's collected, sometimes it doesn't match up from year to year. In fiscal 2019, we collected over $48,000. So far this year, we've only collected $7,700. So it's depending on the timing of when the larger projects come in, they pay up front. Then the hearings could last, several months of hearings before they finally get approval. So sometimes you really can't match up from one year to the next. But the total budget request for fiscal '21 is $27,800.
Finance Committee have any further comments?
And no further comments.
Questions of the council? I think Mr. Gilly make an important point about the revenues not necessarily lining up with the expenses in a given year, so,
Right.
so it's, we have to look at
Overall.
over several years in order to
Right.
better understand how that operates. All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 15, the Board of Appeals budget.
So, second.
Moved by Councilor Donato, seconded by Vice Chair Santos. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of budget number 15, the Board of Appeals budget. All those members in favor? By a vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 10F is budget number 18, fire alarm traffic signals.
This budget for 2021 was level funded for this year. So there were no changes, and we found that the funds used appropriately.
We do have Randy Hudson here from our fire department. Randy heads up the fire alarm traffic signal budget. Randy and his crew do a great job. Last year, or the current year that we're in now, we did increase this budget. We increased the personal services $3,000, in materials and supplies $4,000. Spoke with Randy. This budget's going very good this year, and he said he was able to level fund, which I'm grateful for Randy for doing that. We also collect revenue from this budget. We collect master box fees, $225 per master box. We collect approximately $30,000 per year. The total budget request for fiscal '21 is $63,515.
Thank you. Any questions of the council? Councilor Chines?
Just a quick question. Could you talk a little bit about sort of what drove the reserve fund transfer in fiscal 2019 that then got built into the budget going forward? Again, no concern about the overall amount, but just curious as to, that impact in 19.
I believe it's the cost for replacement equipment, where the items out there that, the control boxes, the traffic signal.
Yeah, I could answer that. I think in an unusual year with damage, storm damage, a lot of the traffic signals are kind of aging, 20 years old, 25 years old. So that year we took a real hit on it, and we couldn't keep up with it.
Got it.
So multiple traffic signals down. When you lose traffic equipment, it's electronic, so it takes a hit. It's multiple components, and they cost the money to replace.
Great, thank you.
That helps. Right?
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you. So if it didn't get picked up by the microphone, it was some storm damage that had impacted some boxes that required more equipment replacement than would have normally been the case in a given year on that. Thank you for that explanation. I know, as we're going to approve this one and move on to it. Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? I know this is a really important budget because there's a real safety component to that. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for being able to keep things level funded certainly as well. Much appreciated. With that, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 18, the fire alarm traffic signals budget.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donato. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of budget number 18, the fire alarm traffic signals budget. All of those in favor? By a vote of 6-0, the motion carries. And seeing that it's just after 7:05, if we could take a break from these budgets, we'll have the public hearing and then resume this item number 10. So with that, I will call item number 8. This is a public hearing that is related to D&M Liquor Corp., doing business as S&M Liquors. The applicant has filed an application for a stock transfer and change of officer director license amendment for a package store license. And this business is located at 258 to 262 Water Street. So with that, if you could identify yourselves.
Good evening. My name is Attorney John Meridian, Demarcus Law Offices in Lynn, Massachusetts. And with me is Rakesh Patel, one of the principal shareholders of D&M Liquor Corp.
Welcome.
We're just here tonight to request a approval of a stock transfer. Rakesh is buying out one of the other shareholders, buying his shares of stock, and approval of a change of officer and director to name Rakesh here as the president, treasurer, secretary, and director. Brijesh, who's currently one of the shareholders, vice president, director, and Tushar Patel, who's a current shareholder as director. So those are 2 items today we're asking for.
Thank you. Does anyone on the council have any questions relative to the stock transfer? No. I did have one question for you, relative to an incident that happened several months ago at the establishment. Specifically, it occurred back in August of 2019. I know that the ABCC just came down with its decision relative to that, and it was for selling to a minor, to an underage young woman. And I was hoping you could speak to that, because I know that some of us have concerns relative to that. We take the alcohol, service and also
Right, so
sales
there
very
was an
seriously.
incident, it was August, and a customer utilized a fake ID to buy alcohol, and maybe the ABCC was there to investigate it. They had the hearing back in, was it December? December, and they issued a warning for the incident. Rakesh here runs a clean store, and, it's an honest mistake, not denying it happened. They do check IDs, and do you have a scanner there? Or do you?
No, not yet.
And we recommend that install a scanner. It's called, it used to be called Advanced ID. Its name is skipping me, but it's a software program where it's a point of sale. So someone swipes a bottle of liquor, requests an ID, scan it, and it pops up, 21 or not. So they're looking to install that. I've recommended it to them, so.
So what is the timeline for that? I mean, looking to install and, knowing with
Right, so
certainty.
when do you?
Yeah, we can order it next week.
He asked me last week about it, so he's gonna order it and install it, so he can definitely do it. So, we can say, 2 or 3 weeks to get it in there.
Aside from the scanner, what other steps are you taking, if any, to try to safeguard
But we don't
against
take
underage
out-of-state
sales?
right now. We don't take any out-of-state.
He's not gonna take any longer out-of-state IDs.
Assigned to.
He's installing a sign, no service for under 21. I do believe once we do get the scanner in there, and I do realize that'll help a lot with the ID issue. Fake IDs, the science behind those is getting pretty creative with it, so it's hard to catch just with the naked eye on those things, so.
And I know there was also a concern based on the findings of the ABCC relative to the absence of candor by your employee when first approached by the investigators. I understand that ultimately it says that the owner had acknowledged the violation and appeared to admonish the clerk. The person working at the time, though, seemed to have not been very upfront. Is there anything that's being done relative to that, from a discipline perspective?
Did you fire him, or is he?
Yeah, I find him.
He fired that clerk, so he's no longer there. I wasn't.
He's not working anymore.
That's a pretty significant step, certainly. Okay. Mr. Mullen, do we have the ability to condition this vote on the scanner being installed?
I think rather than condition it, because I'm not sure that the statutes don't contemplate a conditional approval. What you might do is exact a promise from the applicant. I think you've already got it, but you probably want them to use the word promise on the record. And then to have somebody check back with the licensee in a few weeks to make sure they've made good on that. And if they haven't, lying to the licensing authority is, I would say, certainly something that you can discipline them for.
So with that, can we get a promise then on a date certain? I want to make sure you have ample time, but a date certain by which you can have that scanner
Within 1
installed and
month.
in use?
We can get it within a month. He's telling me to get it
Okay,
installed.
so why don't we say then by February 29th, I think it's a leap year, so by February 29th, it's your promise you will have that installed and operating?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Counselor Donaco?
Never mind, leap year.
Oh.
Oh, is it leap year?
We're on a leap year now.
Yeah.
So, my question, going forward a little bit further, Are all of your employees tip certified? Do they all have certification?
Yeah,
Can we get those certifications submitted to us
okay.
for every employee in there that's serving alcohol? So everyone that takes the money from the person, checks the ID, even if they're doing physical or electronically, can we have the certification that they have been trained properly to do so? Thank you.
And can we have that, say, by, the end of this month?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a sort of logistical question. Is that something we would have already had as part of the annual license renewal process that we just went through? I believe we renewed them, we approved them back in December. Yep.
For employees as of that time?
Correct.
Right.
So
I guess we can
a
have-
few weeks later, I
Right.
guess I mean, I'm fine if the committee wants to, council wants to request that. I just want to put it out there that we actually have gotten that information fairly recently.
As long as they're all on file for anyone to see, that's all I care.
Great, all right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Seeing none, then the motion before you would be the approval of an application for a stock transfer and change of officer director, license amendment for a package store for D&M Liquor Corp., doing business as S&M Liquors. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Chines. Any further discussion? So the motion before you is the approval of this application for stock transfer and change of officer director. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
It passes 6-0. Thank you, and we appreciate that
Thank
information
you.
coming
Good
to
luck.
us.
And good luck.
Good luck. All right, we will now jump back to budgets. We're going back to item number 10 now, and for those watching at home, all these budgets are listed on our website in our meeting material packets for this evening. Our next budget is item 10G, number 22, Animal Inspector Budget.
The animal inspector budget had a very small increase, 0.63%, and that was in professional services for the animal inspector.
Thank you.
We do have Kenny Stake here tonight. Kenny handles both the animal control budget and the parking clerk budget, which is the next budget. Like Janice said, there was a small increase in personal services. The reason for that is that's the residual effect of the union, or the last union contract. Currently, the supervisory union hasn't settled their new contract yet. So when they do settle that there'll be an article at town meeting which will increase the supervisory line items throughout various budgets. Main expenses within the animal control budget under contractual services. There's a $1,200 line item for professional services, which is used for vet fees or vet services. And under sundry charges, there's a $3,000 line item which is used for the dog pound, which we pay Saugus for use of their dog pound. Total budget request is $83,533.
Finance Committee have any further comment?
No comments.
Questions of the council? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the animal inspector budget, budget number 22 for fiscal year 2021.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Chines. Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the animal inspector budget number 22. All those in favor? Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Next item is budget, or item number 10H, budget number 24, parking clerk.
The parking clerk, there was a decrease in $3,000 in this for contractual services. I believe it is related to the animal inspector as well, with the combined services that they do.
Some of it was, yes. Under the contractual services, there was a $1,000 decrease for printing and binding, which is used for parking tickets. With the new handheld devices, there's less actual printed tickets needed. That it's part of the service with the handhelds. There's also a decrease in professional services of $2,275. This is because the company that we use to track our tickets For the new tickets that are being done with the handhelds, that cost is gonna flow through the police department budget. The remaining cost that's left in this budget is to handle what's already in the works. So there'll be a run out eventually in this budget. That line item should go down to zero. We do collect revenue within this budget. We collect approximately $80,000 a year. In fiscal 19, we collected $36,000 in parking violations for the full year. Already for fiscal 20, which is through half the year, we've already collected $40,623, so we've more than doubled what we collected last year. Total budget request for fiscal 21 is $9,375.
Further
No
comment from
comments.
FinCom? No. And anything from parking clerk? No further comment?
No.
No, okay. All right, so any questions of the council? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion for the approval of this parking clerk budget number 24.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councillor Smith Galvin. Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of budget number 24. This is the parking clerk budget for fiscal year 2021. All those in favor? Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 10I is budget number 25, the Council on Aging budget.
Yes, there was an increase in this budget for personal services for the year for 2021.
The total increase for personal services was $5,358. This is all contractual and negotiated increases. I will point out, the clerical union contract is settled, so those numbers are hard. The supervisory has not been settled, so at some point we may revisit and increase this budget once that contract is finalized. The major expenses within this budget, under the oil and additives line item, $7,800, which is gas for the senior van, and the Mystic Valley Services line item, which is used for Meals on Wheels and in-home care, that was $6,275. The total budget request for fiscal 21 is $250,630. And Judy Luciano is here tonight. Judy does a great job for us with the seniors.
Indeed. Any further comment of the
No,
Finance
no
Committee?
further comments.
Director Luciano, would you like to offer any comment? All right, thank you. And indeed, she does do a terrific job. I should say one thing. I know that the new van has been working out very well, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Very nice, very sharp, very sleek. Even all the other employees and drivers can also drive it, myself, admins, anybody.
And very reliable, too, fortunately.
Very reliable. That's why it's nice.
All right, and then questions of the council? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 25, the Council on Aging budget for fiscal year 2021.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos. It's a tie, but I'll give it to Councilor Smith Galvin. So with that, the motion before you is the approval of the budget number 25, Council on Aging budget. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 10J is budget number 27, Recreation.
This budget, there was a 0.74% salary increase for 2021. This entire budget continues to be absorbed by all the recreational fees that are generated by the town. So,
The small increase is in personal services. That's the residual effect of the last union contract. Dan McGrath is here tonight. Dan heads up the recreation department, does a fabulous job putting on the various programs. Dan is part of the supervisory union, and once that contract is settled, we will revisit that line item. The total budget request for fiscal 21 is $106,734.
Any further comment from Finance Committee?
no.
I see Mr. McGrath. Do you have any comment?
No, just thank you for the consistent support from the board. We greatly appreciate it. Make our job much easier because of you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Questions or comments of the council? Councilor Chines.
Thank you. Just
Two quick questions. Mr. Gill, you mentioned sort of the entire budget for the rec department is offset by the revenue from the fees that we collect. Do you have that number in terms of what we actually collect annually in front of you?
Last year, I checked the numbers, approximately 275,000.
Okay. Great. And the second question I had, just, you've mentioned a number of times the supervisory contract, being up for renegotiation right now.
Correct.
What's the total size of that contract in terms of number of employees and total salary?
I'm not positive on that.
Probably looking at between 12 and 15 employees.
Okay.
You're not looking at a huge.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking to, as we talk about kind of doing having to settle that at town meeting later.
Right.
Just wanted to get a sense as to what the impact would be, but it doesn't seem
Our
like
goal
it's
is to-
hugely
no.
material.
No, our goal is to have those all at town meeting.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I just
Counselor
ask
Butt.
A budgeting question,
Sure.
Kevin? So we have two spreadsheets here that have 0, 0, 0, 0 all in them.
Okay?
Is that supposed to be there? So
Yes.
152 and 153.
Yes.
Is that because it's all offset?
Those expenditures come out of the revolving account, which is set up, which is off budget, that the only thing that comes out of the tax levy is for the full-time recreation director. I've left those accounts at zero. Once we set up the recreation department as a tax levy funded entity, I wasn't sure if it was going to progress to the point where we were gonna start appropriating the money out of the tax levy, or if we were gonna continue to use the revolving account to fund it. So it was just a mechanism to set up all the accounts at once. Did that answer your
Do you have a
question?
follow-up?
Let me think about this.
Okay.
Counselor Smith Galvin.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, what are the pros and cons to doing it one way or the other?
For a full-time person, where Dan McGrath is a full-time benefit eligible, we need to appropriate that money out of the tax levy.
Okay.
We recoup that from taking the money from fees, moving it to the general fund.
Great.
The part-time help that he uses during the summer and during the course of the year, those part-time people can be charged to the revolving account, which we did set up at town meeting. And the cost for the various programs, it's a half a dozen of one. We could appropriate the money out of the tax levy and then just bring all the fees into the general fund. So it's really a half a dozen of one, whatever. But I think when we originally set it up, we wanted the programs that were being set up for us to be able to charge a fee to cover the actual cost. And
Right.
I think by doing it in the revolving account, you can track it a little bit better.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, comments? No? All right, seeing none, then I will entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 27. This is the Recreation Department budget for fiscal year 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Donaco, seconded by Counselor Chines. Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the Recreation Department budget for fiscal year 2021. All those in favor? Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 10K is budget number 28, Veteran Services.
Okay, this budget, there was an increase of $929 due to professional and contractual services for the year.
That $929, it breaks down under personal services, $840, which is a contractual and negotiated increase. And under contracted services, there was an $89 increase in the professional services line item, which is used as Wakefield's cost to Melrose to be part of the district, where we share the veteran service officer and the director, Karen Burke, which is here tonight. Karen does a great job for us. Under contractual services, there's a professional services line item, $49,998, which is Wakefield's cost to be part of the district. So that's part of Karen's pay, part of the Veteran Service Officer's pay. A portion is also charged to Melrose, a portion is charged to Saugus. The recipient line item, $170,000, which is used for veterans' benefits. A portion of that, up to 75%, is reimbursed by the state. We anticipate approximately $100,000 coming back in fiscal '20 for what we pay out to the veterans. The total budget request is $246,437.
Further comment from Finance Committee?
No further comments.
Any comment from VSO Burke?
No, thank you all for your support.
Thank you for the work you
Thank
do.
you.
Indeed. Questions or comments of the council? All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 28, the Veteran Services budget.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Any further discussion? Then the motion before you is the approval of budget number 28, the Veteran Services budget for fiscal year 2021. All those in favor?
Aye.
By a vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you again for your work. Item 10L is budget number 36, streetlights.
Yes, the streetlight budget was level funded, for 2021 as in 2020. I think how many years before it will start to decrease again? There was a decrease a couple of years ago, so I think we're about 6 or 7 years before it will decrease again with the new lights.
Right. 3 years ago, the municipal light department received a state grant to switch over the streetlights to LED streetlights. With that, there was a $25,000 a year savings, which we received 3 years ago. Once the MLD recoups their capital costs for doing the retrofits, which should be in about maybe 6, maybe 7 years, we'll be able to see this budget go down further. But for the next several fiscal years, we will stay level funded at $188,131.
Further comment of Finance Committee?
No further comments on this budget.
Do we have anyone here for streetlights? Don't believe so, right? Questions of the council? Councilor Chines.
Quick question, Mr. Gill. So it was a $25,000 reduction when we did the conversion, so prior to the, so the conversion to LED, we were spending about $210,000? Okay. 213? Okay, thank you.
Further questions? At this point, where do we stand with the streetlight conversion? Have all been done now? Do we have any left?
I believe they're all done now.
Okay. Great. Seeing no further questions, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 36, the streetlights budget.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilor Donaco, seconded by Councilor Chines. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of budget number 36, the streetlights budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
By a vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 10M is budget number 38, the Historical Commission.
This budget is also level funded for 2021.
Main expenses within this budget, $1,030 for printing, which is used to advertise their meetings, and also $500 for other materials and supplies, which is mainly used for signage repairs and upgrades. Total budget request is $2,000.
No
Any
further
further comments? And do we have anyone here this evening from Historical? Okay. Any questions of the council? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the Historical Commission budget, which has historically been level funded. Budget number 38.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Donaco, seconded by Councilor Chines. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of budget number 38, the Historical Commission budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
By a vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item number 10N is budget number 41, unemployment.
This budget is also level funded for 2021. These items for the unemployment budget, they're split between the town and the school. And they are, again, as I said before, level funded for 2021.
So this budget is split one-third towards the town, 2/3 for the school. The town portion being 25,000, the school portion being 50,000. The total budget request is $75,000.
Do we have any questions of the council? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 41, the unemployment budget.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donato. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of budget number 41, the unemployment budget for fiscal year 2021. All those in favor? Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item number 10O is budget number 42, the reserve fund.
The reserve fund is also level funded for 2021 in the amount of $300,000.
And this budget is basically used for unforeseen, unbudgeted, or under-budgeted expenses or emergencies. As they arise, usually, we do not do reserve fund transfers until the end of the fiscal year. We wait to see, even if there may be an emergency earlier in the year, we wait to see if maybe a department can absorb that amount or some of that amount within their budget before we do a reserve fund transfer.
Further comment of
No
Finance
further
Committee?
comments.
Any questions of the council? Mr. Gill, those transfers normally happen right around June 30, right?
Correct.
In a given year?
Usually to finalize the fiscal year, we review, Steve and I will review it with both town council and the finance committee, make sure, we're all on the same page with what's needed to close out the fiscal year.
And what have you found in terms of your comfort level with where we are relative to the reserve amount?
The 300,000, I think, is a good amount. Maybe in a couple of years, we may want to look at ratcheting that up a little bit. It's been 300,000 for quite a while, and the budget continually grows. It might be time in a couple of years to increase that.
Like as a percentage of the overall budget,
Right.
you're saying?
Yeah.
Right, understand. Okay. Thank you. All right, so any further questions? With that, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 42, the reserve fund budget.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Chines. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the reserve fund budget number 42 for fiscal year 2021. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the budget carries. Motion carries unanimously. Budget number 44 is our final budget of this evening. This is the professional medical budget.
Yes, this budget is also level funded for the year for the medical examinations and any medical expenses that are incurred by departments of police and fire.
Police, fire in town.
in town.
And it's mainly used for new hire physicals, but it can include current employees that may be out injured. We need them to have a physical before they're allowed to come back to work. Police and fire exams, when we hire new police and fire, some of the testing that is done on those individuals can be pretty extensive, where they do the psychological background checks. We also do mandatory Department of Transportation physicals for individuals that have CDL licenses. Total budget request for fiscal '21 is $10,850, with $8,350 coming from tax levy, $1,250 from the water enterprise, and $1,250 coming from the sewer enterprise.
Further comment of the Finance Committee?
No further comments on this budget.
Questions or comments of this body? Councilor Chines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two quick questions. The actual spending through the first half of fiscal '20 is fairly low. I'm assuming that's timing related in terms of, firefighter classes, police classes coming through the academies.
That's correct, that there are actually 4 police physicals that are not included in that. So that number will be going up.
Okay.
Quite a bit.
Yep.
Over the next month or so.
So that gets me to actually the second question, which is if we look at the historic spend, fiscal 18 and fiscal 19, we were both appropriating more than what we have appropriated for fiscal '20 and what's proposed for '21, and we've also spent more. I guess, is there a concern here that maybe we are underfunding this, or, I don't know, Mr. Mayo, if you feel that we've got the right number with the 10.8?
I think it comes in cycles, so I think we got the right number for this year at this point. That's not to say we might not have to come in for a, reserve fund, but I think we're comfortable now. We look at it every year and see whether we're gonna tweak it or not. So
Okay.
this is actually, but I think we're comfortable at this point.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion for the approval of budget number 44, professional medical.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Chines. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is budget number 44, professional medical budget. All those in favor? By a vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. DiGiambattista, and thank you, Mr. Gill, for all of your hard work on this, and thank you to the Finance Committee for participating in this process. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, can I just want to
Of
thank the
course.
department heads for coming out tonight.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Great to have you here. If you have had any questions or concerns.
Yep.
Collectively, they do a great job. They really care about the town. And any one of them can be reached really 24/7. This week talks 24/7. So I do want to thank you for your excellent service, all of you. Thank you.
I feel like we all know all of you personally, and that just says a lot about the kind of relationship building that you do with the town, so thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Continued success. Thanks.
I'll also just thank all the members of the Finance Committee.
Yes.
in
Well, they're not done. They're going to be back in front of us.
We'll be seeing them a few more meetings.
But thank you all.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We're moving on now to item number 11. This is the traffic advisory recommendations. I believe we have Lieutenant Anderson here this evening to present recommendations that were included in the packets that we have, and also the packet that's online for this night's meeting. Good evening and welcome, Lieutenant Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
New Year.
The Traffic Advisory Committee met Friday, December 13th, and we had a number of issues to discuss, but one we have some recommendations on. It's the parking issue from Cedar Street between Albion and Gould. We had a very good turnout, a lot of public support, great dialogue actually between the residents in that neighborhood, and based on that dialogue, we came up with a recommendation that parking be restricted for 2 hours, up to 2 hours on Cedar Street between Albion and Gould, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. The Friday component is that neighborhood felt that on Saturdays, the commuter traffic really isn't an issue there. I think it's something that we may see moving forward with other neighborhoods, but I don't want to speak for other neighborhoods without getting the type of dialogue that we had with Cedar Street. We really had a great dialogue with the neighbors there, so I thank them for coming out and giving us kind of their perspective on what's right for their neighborhood. So moving forward, we may see some other neighborhoods where we feel that Saturday really isn't a concern with the commuters, and maybe we can focus our parking enforcement in the future more toward the downtown area, business district, especially considering we have part-time parking enforcement. So that may be something in the future that we look into and get a little more out of our parking enforcement in the areas that need it most. In addition to that restriction, we had a good turnout from 98 Cedar Street, which is Cedar Gardens Condo Association. A little bit of background on that development there. It was built in the 1960s. There's a good population of elderly residents there, and that was built prior to the off-street parking bylaw that we know today, which is calculated based on the number of bedrooms as opposed to square footage. So that's kind of, parking has been a hardship for Cedar Gardens for quite some time. They're currently using all of their visitor parking spaces, for the most part, depending on the time of day, as parking spots, leaving their visitors with pretty much no place to park. And like I said, a lot of the residents are either elderly or there's a boomerang generation where they have their college students returning, or their adult relatives that are kind of staying with them temporarily, so they have no place to park. They even expressed the need for, you know, if a repairman comes to my house, I have to move my car out into the street, and if they're there longer than 2 hours, I could get a parking ticket. So the resolution that we came up for that issue there is to allow the association to purchase 10 visitor parking permits. They would be the same as a regular resident permit, but the association would decide, you know, how that's best divvied up amongst their association based on the needs there. In addition to that, another issue that we came across was the children's gathering daycare. So they have a driveway which meets the parking bylaw as it stands today. However, they don't use their driveway for their 4 staff members. Their safety procedure is to have their staff members park on Cedar Street or Albion Street and use their driveway for kind of like a safe drop-off. That way parents aren't letting their kids out on Albion Street or on the corner of Cedar and Albion, which is kind of busy there. So I definitely agree with that, and I don't want to create an unsafe situation there. They were very appreciative of you know, the Cedar Street residents allowing them to park there and, you know, being good neighbors. But now that we're trying to restrict the commuters from taking advantage of that neighborhood, I don't want to become bad neighbors and restrict them from something that's worked out for them for a while. So our resolution for that was to allow the children's gathering to purchase 4 merchant passes, and they can continue with their 4 staff members parking on street during business hours and have parents drop off in their driveway. So that in essence is the Cedar Street recommendation. We discussed a number of other streets at the last town council meeting. We did not have the turnout like we did with Cedar Street. As a matter of fact, Cedar Street was the only street that came to the traffic advisory committee meeting. So I don't want to impact other streets and make decisions for them, especially after the type of dialogue we had with Cedar Street. We really got a good idea of what was going on in the neighborhood, what was best for that neighborhood there. Just to give you a little recap on some of the streets that we talked about. We talked about Main Street going down toward Franklin, that area. In front of Lisa's Pizzas is kind of an issue, because if we restrict that to 2-hour parking, I feel like right now it's kind of used as like a 15-minute space, you know, unofficially, and we may have double parking and other issues that are kind of unintended with that. I could see with the new condo development there, people parking up to 2 hours in that spot and then creating another issue there. So I'd like to get a little more of a sense of kind of what the needs of that area are. Another one was for Auburn Street, 2-hour parking. So Auburn Street currently has a no parking on one side, and then that one side that you can park is restricted from 7A to 5P on weekdays. It's a very, very narrow street. I think the reason for the current restrictions should stay in place. 7 to 5 is probably for trash pickup, you know, Amazon deliveries, UPS, things like that. So if we allow people to bypass that with a resident permit, I can only assume that would impact, you know, trash pickup and things like that. But having no input from the residents there, I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff of how it appears in that neighborhood. Francis, Madison, Warren, those neighborhoods there, I want to wait for some resident support there for restrictions. I know that some neighborhoods are perfectly fine with the stray commuter parking in their neighborhood, and others may be opposed to it and would rather buy a resident permit. So I'd like to get some more input there. And then Albion Street. So Albion Street from the Stoneham line east has no restrictions until you hit number 280. 280 east toward North Ave is primarily a multifamily. West from North Ave heading towards Stoneham, you have either 1 to 2 hour parking going past 7-Eleven up until number 227, and then there's no parking from here to corner from the area 227 to Cedar Street, and then that area there is restricted. So that's pretty much where Albion Street stands. Any questions on any of that?
Question for Lieutenant Anderson. Councilor Donaco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lieutenant, thank you very much for coming in and giving us the update on this. I understand fully what the issue is going on Cedar Street as far as the residents are concerned. I'm going to find the problem, though, when we start dealing with any type of association in having on-street parking for the association. Because we just said no to Albion Street. We said no to the projected building that's going to be built in Greenwood, that they couldn't use the street for any of their residents to be parking in, permit or what. They'd have to accommodate the people for their parking that within. So on Cedar Street, even though it was built back in the 60s, we're doing it now, allowing them to park in the street.
Visitor parking. Visitor parking, so if you have someone come to your house to repair something.
Well,
Correct.
there was two different parking, wasn't there?
Well, the merchant was for another,
Merchant was for the.
No, hold on. Ashbeth. The first one, there was one recommendation, you had a 2-hour parking restriction on Cedar Street.
But there's no resident parking you're giving to folks at Cedar Gardens.
So what would be the hours on the visitors be?
So the visitors, those 10 passes would allow them to surpass the 2-hour restriction that we're asking for.
So they can be
right
parked
now.
there all day?
They could currently park there all day if they move their vehicle, or they could park there anytime after 6 PM overnight. There's no restrictions. But what this is looking to accomplish is during that 2-hour restriction from 8 to 6 during the day, they could have visitors over for longer than 2 hours, and especially the elderly residents they could move their car out with a visitor pass and allow a repairman to park in their spot. And this was something that I really was opposed at first to giving any type of additional passes to a development, because, you're right, Councilor Dinoco, a lot of our complaints it stems from the development, and we have the bylaw in place. I just think that it's a very unique kind of situation, and it's not allowing residents to have a resident permit. It's allowing a visitor pass, which is something that we may consider in the future for our residents too, to bring before you.
That's fine. It would be site-specific on this being with Cedar Gardens. So we're going to allow them to distribute the 10 on their own.
Correct.
Okay, so what happens, and I love being the devil's advocate.
Sure. No, I appreciate
What
that.
if you're one of the residents there and you let yourself use a visitor parking for the entire day? What's to stop that? So, I mean, I always think outside the box when it comes to parking. We've been dealing with it
Sure.
now for years, okay? And I'm not as trusting as everyone else seems to think, because I see what happens. So again, this all stems from us during the approval process, because that's where it starts. If someone puts in a condominium,
Correct.
they have to take care of the parking. If they come in seeking a waiver on parking, we as a town can't say, oh, don't worry, you can park in the street.
Sure, and I don't want to create any type of issue like that, but just to give you some numbers there that were provided by the association, they have 32 deeded spaces. They currently have 48 vehicles there. They're using the 10 guest spots as a first come, first serve. So they really don't have much overflow for not only visitors, but if someone was to do a repair or anything like that. So that 32 deeded spaces plus the 10 would have brought them into compliance back in the 60s when it was done by square footage.
Right.
Today, as it stands, it's really not. I would have to see how many 2-bedrooms and 3-bedrooms there were there. It just doesn't, it probably doesn't compute to today's standards, which are 2 different standards, but.
I understand what was involved in this. I read through the whole thing. I just want to make sure that we're not saying, okay, we can do it here, we can do it elsewhere too for another association.
I definitely hear that. This was something that I thought long and hard about because of that exact issue. And traffic advisory deals with parking really is a big component of it. We, obviously deal with stop signs and speeding cars and things like that, but the primary thing we're seeking to change is the parking situation in town. And you're right, I don't want to create a situation where we're making an exception and then it becomes the rule or could potentially become the rule. But I think this is really it's a unique circumstance, and I think I would be I would be opposed to it if we were allowing residents of 98 Cedar Street to go to Town Hall and purchase a resident permit. But this is something where the association is kind of deciding where that overflow is needed. And it's not just because you're a resident of 98 Cedar Street, you'd be able to purchase a resident permit. That I would be opposed to, because you're right, that they do need to provide a good amount of off-street parking.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Shines.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Anderson, for both the presentation, but what sounds like a really robust discussion with a lot of public feedback last month. I think that shows in sort of the way you've targeted the recommendations. I just, thinking about, Councilor Giannaco, your comments, I certainly agree that anytime we make an exception, it's something that I wouldn't want us to do in a cavalier way. But in this scenario, because it is sort of a unique residential property, given that it was put in place, it was built at a time when the requirements that we've put a lot of thought into over the last couple of decades around parking and access didn't exist, I do think this makes sense. I think also, Lieutenant Anderson, you pointed out, this is a building where there are a lot of elderly residents, and so just thinking about the healthcare needs of those individuals, home health aides coming in and so forth, having some access to visitor parking, I think, would be appropriate for, in this case. So I support this, and again, really appreciate the work that the committee did in pulling together this recommendation.
Thank you.
Councilor Smith Galvin.
I just have a quick technical question. Thank you very much. So the 4-hour merchant parking, in general, my understanding is when you have a merchant pass, you essentially can park in designated merchant parking spaces, or can you park anywhere?
No. You could, merchant spaces. I mean, they could still park anywhere, but they'd be subject to, depending on where the restrictions of that area.
So these 4 that we're issuing, there are designated merchant spaces for them to use?
There are designated merchant spaces. There are not on Cedar Street, but I think they'd be able to park on probably Albion Street and other areas. I think they're willing to be creative on their end and find a spot, as long as they know that their staff can park
Okay, so we're
somewhere.
not giving out 4-hour merchant parking for them to park anywhere on Cedar Street?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
They can only park for,
Right.
in legal places.
And I just bring it
But-
up because I know I'm still hearing from Greenwood in certain areas that there's limited merchant parking, and I want to make sure, again, that we are being consistent.
Correct.
So thank you.
If I could just respond to the Greenwood one, though, I just want to put this out that along Main Street from Oak all the way almost to Green Street, that entire northbound side, with the exception of the bus stop, is merchant parking. There is so much merchant parking in Greenwood. I understand that people don't like to walk in the winter. I understand that there's some challenges for some people, but there is so much merchant parking in Greenwood, and I think they want the prime spots, which don't we all, but there is an incredible amount of merchant parking there, so I hope that
That helps my explanation when I get the card.
I hope that
Thank
they
you.
take advantage of it. I think some people are unfamiliar with it, so I just wanted to put that out
Okay,
there for
thank you
anybody
very
watching.
much.
Because I think currently, Lieutenant, most of that parking goes unutilized.
Yes.
I mean, there are many open spaces.
And that's why we wanted to make good use of those spots, that we wanted to restrict it from commuters, obviously, and that's why the time restriction was there before. But they're just empty spots sitting there throughout the day, so it restricts it from commuter parking, but would allow merchants, that's a huge goal of ours, is to make good use of those spaces.
And perhaps the town could do, take more effort and really kind of get the word out more to those businesses in that district that would be impacted, because, I mean, every day, if you go by there, you see plenty of spaces, but I don't know that there's necessarily a connection that people are making just yet. Vice Chair Sant. Oh,
Sorry.
Councilor
Where
Butt.
exactly is it? Because I go by there every day, so I'm just curious where.
So if you're traveling north of Oak, all those spots to the right, once you get past where the old Subaru dealership was, where Hallmark Health is, all those spots heading north toward about Green Street are all 4-hour parking. So it's quite a stretch there.
Yes, so
Quite a
I'm gonna
stretch.
push back a little bit. They're not empty. So I would appreciate a report back, because that's exactly where I live.
Okay.
And they are not, they're full, especially during business hours.
Okay.
So it would be helpful to just get a report on that. I just don't they're not staying vacant. I mean, that's my commute every day, and they are during business hours. They're full.
Okay, I hope it's merchants parking there.
Right, so
but,
that's what
but
I'm
yeah.
curious about
Okay.
knowing. I just don't want it out there that they're empty, because they're not.
Are you talking where the ledge is? Is
Yeah.
that what we're
Correct.
talking
Yeah.
about?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think you're
Are you
all
talking
the way
about
up on the
train track side
ledge.
or
It's,
the other
it's
side?
way, we're talking way up. We're talking
Correct.
as if
Same
you're,
side as
you're leaving
Wakefield.
Hallmark and going towards the downtown.
Correct.
On the
Heading-
right,
not heading-
that stretch where the ledge is.
Right, it's
So
where
they've
the
def-
ledge
they've
is.
definitely
It's where
filled
the-
That's all
up
now
on
been
Oak,
labeled.
yeah.
Yes, but just recently,
think-
so, yeah.
Further up, there may be some
Right.
walking distance spots that people could take
People that
advantage of.
walk.
But I'll have park enforcement make sure that those are merchant
Yeah,
merchant passes there.
along the ledge, there's a number of spots on a given morning.
I think so, from what I've seen at least. So hopefully
Vice Chair Santos.
hopefully it's the right people parking there.
Lieutenant Anderson, thank you. I know how hard you work with all of these issues. And we can always, if we find that the visitors' parking or passes aren't working great, we can come back and say, you get 5 visitors. I mean, it's a fungible decision we're making. I think, I'm guessing some of the folks in Greenwood, the commuters who are parking in Greenwood neighborhoods have been ticketed, because I've never seen the commuting parking go as far down as it has. I took that for years. I parked there for years, and it goes to where the bridge, which street is? Miriam.
Yep.
It never used to, cars would go out to Miriam. And so the only reason people are doing that, I think, is because they can't cheat in other parts of Wakefield.
I hope that's the case.
Yeah, I would bet it is.
Because otherwise, like we discussed in the last meeting, it's how far out do you stretch the parking restrictions, and what neighborhoods want a 2-hour parking sign in front of their house, and what neighborhoods don't. It's gonna, at some point, we're gonna have to, get a handle on it if it doesn't on its own. So hopefully,
Yep.
naturally, people get the message and
Right.
park
No,
where they should.
but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, how many units do we have in Cedar Gardens? Do you know?
So there's 32 deeded spaces, so I don't know if they have, I think they had one per unit at the time. They now have 48 vehicles, but I don't know how many actual units are there. I just know how many deeded spaces. I could find that out, though.
And with the number 10, was that somewhat arbitrarily picked? Was it because that was a number of visitor spots that are being occupied by residents? How did
Well,
that?
we know for sure from Cedar Gardens, from their association, they have 48 vehicles that need spaces. So to support those vehicles and then have, say, 4 or 5 left over to kind of give as needed. I think that was a priority, so they could have some visitor spaces open actually on property. So that's how we came up with the 10. It was somewhat arbitrary, but looking at the numbers, what made the most sense to have a little bit of flexibility there for them.
And your proposal is to provide these to the condo association that would then take care of doling them out and
Administering
taking them back,
correct.
et cetera?
Correct.
Okay.
And they would have to pay for the permits like anybody else, but they just wouldn't be an assigned permit to one person, which that's where I really have the issue. It would have to be something unique like this, because to assign them to an individual resident would open it up, and that's an issue we definitely want to avoid.
I think to Councilor Dinaco's point and to your own point, Lieutenant, this does sound or appears to be a unique property in that my biggest concern is creating a precedent for
Correct.
every other condo association coming in and looking for similar relief from us, and I'm sure that several could make compelling arguments.
Sure.
And I think that if we are very cautious in our approach with this, is this something we could perhaps, visitor spaces, are they, the passes, are they renewed annually? I'm trying to,
They are.
as well?
They are.
We could perhaps consider voting to allow them for a year and then revisit it, and then if all goes well, continue beyond that year, and if there are issues, we could always just, reevaluate at that time. Maybe even the number, might be worth a reevaluation. Councilor Chines.
Mr. Chair, couldn't we just ask the traffic advisory committee to reevaluate the number of permits at any time? I mean, I definitely see where you're going, and I think there is value in reevaluating this again, just because I agree that we need to be judicious about exceptions, but I don't know that we need to sort of grant the authority for the 10 park visitor permits for a year, knowing that at any time, we could ask the traffic advisory committee to look at this and come back and recommend something different.
I guess it's just a question of, pilot programs like we often do, and seeing what works. And that was my only thinking. I mean, I agree, it's somewhat 6 versus 1/2 dozen, whether, we can revoke the permits if they're not working. We could do that next month.
So, I think to take it a step further, I think that on-street parking is kind of a luxury. It's not necessarily a right. And in my opinion, I would think they could be revoked at any time for any reason by the town. That's obviously not a practice we'd get into unless there was a reason, but I would think that they're Wakefield roads. There may be a reason to limit, restrict, and revoke on-street parking. So I completely agree. I think if at any time it becomes an issue, we could definitely revisit it. And that's why I think that this, with the visitor permits, it makes a little more sense, because if we really issue them out, it kind of does set that precedent that anybody that's a resident of a street that has time-restricted parking with resident parking permits could get a resident permit, and that should not be the case, because some of these developments are coming in with ample parking for their property, plus some of them are looking at other ways to, walking to the commuter rail, things like that they're trying to make their properties friendly in that regard. So definitely want to hold them to that and not have any type of a backdoor process for this.
Is it fair to say that this body has a consensus or a directive to traffic advisory that if we were to vote in favor of this, it is with the intent of not establishing a precedent that would be universally applied?
Sure.
And
Yes.
with the strictest of scrutiny of the effectiveness of it? Is that a fair directive?
I think, Mr. Chair, I view the approval of this is for this specific situation.
Well, I think it is, but I think some of the requests are more straightforward than others. If we're putting up a traffic stop sign somewhere, that's a little bit different than this, probably.
No, I definitely agree. I think the parking has to be fluid with development and just changes in town, and I think town council's been excellent with that, and I think that that applies here as well.
We've covered Councilor Smith-Galvin's question about the merchant passes. I had the same, so we've got that squared away. Any other questions for Lieutenant Anderson on anything he's presented here? So we could perhaps just take them as 3 separate votes. The first one being the approval of the 2-hour parking on Cedar Street from Albion Street to Gould Street, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Donaco, seconded by Vice Chair Santos. Any further discussion on that piece? So the motion before you would be the approval of that 2-hour parking on Cedar Street between Albion and Gould for the time specified. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. The next vote would be the allocation of 10 visitor parking permits to the Cedar Gardens Association located at 98 Cedar Street, with the understanding that we will, we're directing traffic advisory to pay special attention to the efficacy of that issuance. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Further discussion? Seeing none, then the motion before you is the approval of 10 visitor parking permits for the Cedar Gardens Association located at 98 Cedar Street. All of those in favor? Vote of 6-0, motion carries unanimously. The final vote relative to traffic advisory would be assigning 4 merchant parking permits to the children's gathering, and that is the daycare facility that Lieutenant Anderson spoke about. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Donaco, seconded by Vice Chair Santos. Any further discussion?
Can I ask one question that just occurred to me?
Councilor
on that?
Smith-Galvin, sure, of course.
So we always give out merchant parking passes to merchants. Why is this any different? Why do we have to approve this as a town council and not just a company that has 4 employees?
I can try to answer, because I'm anticipating you putting up
I'd rather
signs
have
in the
Lieutenant
street,
Anderson
because you're keeping them.
I think we're going to need to find some places for that area of Albion Street anyway, and it's kind of a fluid. The merchant parking program is even more fluid than any of the other parking programs, I feel. So I think if they have the ability to have the merchant permits, they're not necessarily a merchant either. They're a daycare, so I think it qualifies, but I think I'd
I'll
like-
defer to you. I just didn't
Yeah.
want to make more work that was kind of
No,
outside
it's
the realm of
def-
daily business.
It's
so-
definitely a fair question. I think that I would be more comfortable with town council approving merchant permits for
Okay.
them, not being a traditional merchant in the sense.
Excellent.
but-
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
That works. Counselor Donato?
Just for a point for clarification, as I'm reading this now and I read we voted on your motion, we're eliminating with the allotment of residential parking permits. That's not part of the motion that you made, correct?
I think you need to make that part of the motion at the end. Yeah, I was gonna ask that at the end. The original motion, which created the hours from 8 AM to 6 PM.
Correct.
Did not include residential parking
Correct,
permits to be
yes.
issued.
Right. So we'll do that as
So you do it at the
a
end,
separate
yeah,
vote.
so
Right,
just make sure we do
exactly.
that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the 4 merchant permit parking passes to the Children's Gathering Daycare. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. And finally, the allotment of residential parking permits for Cedar Street residents in the affected area of Albion Street to Gould Street. Do I have that correct?
Correct.
With the exception of Cedar Garden.
With the exception of Cedar Gardens. Entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Chines, seconded by Counselor Smith Galvin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the allocation of residential parking permits as described. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, motion carries unanimously. Lieutenant Anderson, thank you to, and thank you to
very
the
much.
traffic
Thank you
advisory.
so much.
Appreciate your understanding.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 12 on the agenda is donations. We actually have 4 different categories of donations before us this evening. The first is in our packets already and on the packets available on our town's website. These are donations made to the Council on Aging, and they're all cash gifts in the amount of $13,715 received between October and December of 2019. The motion would be for the acceptance of and expenditure of these gifts.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Donato, seconded by Vice Chair Santos. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the acceptance of the Council on Aging gifts. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 12B is the Fire Department. The Fire Department has requested the acceptance of a gift of $150 from the Savings Bank with their thanks. I'll entertain a motion for the acceptance of that gift.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Counselor Chines. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the acceptance of the $150 gift to the Fire Department. With our thanks, all those in favor?
Aye.
Item 12C is a really exciting one. This is softball field scoreboard, and I believe we have Mr. Bob Burnett here to walk us through this. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I have some handouts because I got some better ideas after the PowerPoint.
Excellent.
Some of it has to do with when the sign company got back to me, so. Did I give you more than? Okay. See, well, what we're proposing is, I've talked to Mr. Kent at the high school and Mr. Tolios, the softball coach, and we're proposing to donate a sign for the new field. And it's something that we've been thinking about all along, just never, it wasn't part of the plan. We just thought we'd be able to have it there for, for later. Just wanted to make sure that everything was gonna work out okay. This is Varsity Scoreboards is the name of the company. We can see the logo down there. That's where the logo's gonna wind up. In your handout, it's in a more prominent place. Whenever they give you an example of a sign, it always has their logo, like right in the middle. So anyhow, so up on the top, looks like I got a little messed up there, but up on the top is an added band that, an added sign that says Wakefield Warriors with Warrior logo in there. And the school committee had suggested that we maybe add something that said something about the gift of the Megan Burnett Foundation. that's what this plan is showing. In reality, what I found out from the sign company is that the added bands of signage only come in one size, and it's almost 2 feet high. So figured that would be good for the Wakefield Warriors, and we'll maybe put the Megan Burnett logo down like between the balls and the strikes or something. The overall sign, the bottom of the sign is 10 feet off the ground. It's a 4-foot-high sign, and the sign band on top that says Wakefield Warriors is another, it's about 1'8" height. And the sign is 8 feet long. I keep calling it the sign, the scoreboard is 8 feet long. This just shows two different kinds of structural posts that could be used. They could either use tube steel or the wide flange. We've also shown dotted in here, something we were planning to do is where the scoreboard would be in center field, the team would be coming from the field house, the locker rooms or whatever, they'd see the back of the sign, so we're thinking that maybe we'll put another sign on that side that says Home of the Warriors or something like that. So they're just not looking like they're walking in the back door. And this is the existing field before the beautiful new fencing got put in. This was just after they got the dirt and the grass started coming up. And again, like I had mentioned before, the scoreboard would be in the shaded area in right center field. This is looking from the backstop. Those posts, the wooden stakes that you see there, that's like home plate pitchers, mountain second base. So that in straightaway center field would be the flagpole, and just to the right of that would be where the scoreboard would go. And this is the same shot, basically, just on a less nice day. The height of the flagpole hasn't really been decided yet. I was going to work with the town engineers, Dennis and the engineers, to see what was appropriate height-wise. I didn't want to put something there that was just kind of short and stubby, where it's down low and you enter from up high, and there's a whole lot of field around. I thought it would be better to have a taller flagpole, but I don't want to be, get too big and have something that needs a huge flag that the wind can never blow. This, you might remember, let's see if I can make this work. There it is, okay. So this is the plan that we'd shown you before for when we were proposing the field. The flagpole is in center, straightaway center field, just outside the fence, and the scoreboard's just adjacent to it. It's about 6 feet between the fence and where the scoreboard post would be, to allow maintenance and whatever around the sign. Didn't want to jam it up right next to the fence. I looked at a few other fields, and the one in Stoneham was pretty good. It was fairly similar. And this is the Stoneham field, and the only the Stoneham field, it's a nice scoreboard and everything, but it's facing due south, so you get a lot of glare, and it's hard to read the score. Theirs is slightly bigger. It's longer. It's about the same height, and our sign band on the top that says Wakefield Warriors would be about the same as Agility Orthopedics. I didn't think you'd mind having Wakefield Warriors instead of Agility, but let's see. Oh, and the score and the inning numbers, the height of the characters is the same as what we're proposing. This is you can see the circle down below is the scoreboard at the Beasley Oval, and up above is where we're proposing it. They're almost at exactly the same relationship to the sun, so that if someone wanted to see how it would work, they could actually go out to the existing field and see. The only difference is that when you're looking at the Beasley Oval, there's a lot of open space behind it, which tends to make it look more like a silhouette. And this one has as you saw before, the shadowed school behind it and trees and whatnot. So I think it's be a little bit easier to read. And this shot's from the upper parking lot behind Woodville, where, excuse me, this is about as close to the high school as people tend to get at that upper level. And you can see that the scoreboard's still at an angle that can be read. And this is Fire Road. This is before they put in the new fence. It's just kind of showing where the fence would be going. I had located some cones over there where the post would be, so that we could, if you can get a good sense of scale and show you what it would actually look like. And this is that view coming from the school I talked about before, that would, maybe later on, after it gets up, whatever, we work with a local vendor to get a sign that, it says, some, Home of the Warriors, something like that. And, that was the one that the sign company came up with, and I said, nah, that's a little bit too much. So that's why I whited it out, and I came up with the version that you see there. So that is, in a nutshell, I tried to get through it as quickly as I could, because I know you got a lot on your plate tonight.
Well, first, thank you for coming out, and thank you for this incredibly generous donation to the town. I mean, it's very much appreciated, I know, on behalf of the entire town council, certainly. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Burnett while he's here? Councilor Donaco.
Well, great presentation, thank you.
Well, thanks.
My concern is going to focus on the third baseline. There's not much diagrams here, but I'm noticing that there's going to be a 60-foot bullpen and a 40-foot dugout put in on the outside of the existing area that is there now. Is there going to be any remediation in regards to encroaching into the wetlands that are there?
No, we already, we did go through that before, and I think everything was approved. I don't know if the DPW had to present to Concom or not, but they did, they talked to me about it, and this was a schematic design.
Right.
And since then, the town engineers have engineered it, they've laid it out, surveyed it,
Yep.
and done everything according to Hoyle. So the field that's out there now, that they've laid out is according to the new design, and everything fits.
So how wide is the bullpen? So we have a 60-foot long, how wide is it?
The bullpen here, it says 10 feet, but it's actually, I think, gonna be more like 8 feet, the width, right?
Right.
Yeah. And the dugout is also gonna be about 8 feet in width, and that is about the same as what the baseball dugout is now, the existing.
My other question is on the proposed flagpole.
The
flagpole?
Yeah.
In talking with Jay Panett from the Veterans Association, Veteran Services, there are poles in town right now currently that don't have flags on them, okay? But there's protocol when there's to place flags on poles, sunrise, sunset, unless, of course, if you're going to light the pole, it could be up all night. Are we going to have someone raising the flag every day, putting the flag down, or are you going to just do it when there's games being played? Will there be a flag on there at all times?
Well, that's more of an operational thing that as a donor, I wouldn't really be getting into.
Okay.
I think the school would handle that. And that maybe they just put the flags up when there's an event going on and take it down, at the end of the day. But we hadn't talked about lighting it. And just like lighting the field, we hadn't talked about that either. But, maybe down the road, that would be something.
No, okay, I appreciate it. So, Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Mayor, what do you think will be the protocol for the flagpole?
I think we'll handle it like we handle all the others. It'll be fine. Either Dennis handles a lot of that, but it's the school custodians that'll put it up and down, so.
Okay.
It won't be up when it's not lit, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough,
Yeah,
thank you.
I have worked with them, with the engineers and Dennis, to make sure that the type of flagpole we're looking at is the type that they want to get, as far as from a maintenance and operation point of view.
Very good. I've been down there, it looks fabulous so far.
Oh, great, thanks. They did a great job.
Councilor Smith Galvin.
I just want to echo what Mr. Donaco said.
so excited to have this done. My daughter cannot wait to play on it in the spring, and having a scoreboard and a flagpole is just going to add that special touch to it. So thank you so very much for that. I guess one question that, as we look at a new high school, I would want to make sure that this gets preserved, assuming that the field gets preserved. If it doesn't, we would put another great one in. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But is this something that we could move aside, if there's construction around it and preserve?
This, this stuff that we're just talking about today?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay, great.
The sign is a box
Okay.
that will get mounted to the posts, and it's not getting welded in place or anything like that.
Perfect. Yeah.
It will be detachable.
I mean, I definitely think we wouldn't want to put it off, and I don't want to do that, but I want to make sure it gets preserved for the future as well. So thank you very much for all you've done for this program.
Again, Mr. Burnett, thank you for, this very generous gift to the town, certainly. I think the design is awesome. It looks great. It's a real benefit to, our student athletes. It's a great way to, to remember your daughter as well. Thank you. We really truly appreciate that.
Sure, thanks.
Certainly.
Thank you so much.
Glad to do it. I'm glad with your help, we were able to do it.
You had the hard part.
Yeah.
Ours is easy.
Depends, depends on where you're sitting.
Right.
I think
Indeed.
you have the hard part.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the acceptance of this gift of a pretty phenomenal scoreboard
And flagpole.
and flagpole.
Seconded.
Moved by Councilor Shine, seconded by Councilor Smith Galvin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is to accept, with our sincere thanks, the addition of a scoreboard and flagpole to the new softball field. All those in favor?
Aye.
Enthusiastic vote of 6-0. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you.
Item 12D on the agenda, a little bit less exciting, but it's some library donations of some printer equipment and the like, and we're incredibly appreciative of those items as well, certainly. And they're laid out in your packets. It's public printer donations, public fax donations, and donations of cash as well, with our sincere thanks. So with that, I'll entertain a motion for the acceptance of an expenditure of the library gifts.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Any discussion? Okay, the motion before you is the approval of the acceptance and expenditure of the library donations. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, motion carries unanimously, and we send our thanks for those as well. Item number 13, it falls under licenses. We'll look first at item 13A. This would be the approval of some common victular renewal licenses. We have 7 applications in total. These applications come from Alfredo's of Wakefield, Honeydew at 386 Main Street, Jade Gourmet, Kippo's Roast Beef, Mayara's Restaurant, Nick's Pizza, and Slice Pizza. With this, we have 7 more applications, and we have now 5 that are outstanding. I will entertain a motion to accept the slate for approval if that meets this body's approval.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Donaco, seconded by Councilor Butt. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the common victular renewal applications, 7 in total. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item 13B is entertainment application renewal licenses. We have 3 entertainment renewal applications. One is for Honeydew at 386 Main Street. The second is for Mayara's Restaurant, and the third is for Slice Pizza. With this, we will have completed the entertainment renewal applications for the current year. I will entertain a motion for the approval of these 3 entertainment renewal applications. Moved by Councilor Donaco, seconded by Councilor Chines. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of these 3 entertainment renewal applications as identified. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries 6-0. Third, we have Class 2 renewal applications to be approved. As already approved by the Police Department, there are 11 in total. They are Auto Annex, Dick's Foreign Car, Highline Motorsports, John's Foreign Car Service, King Auto, Modern Collision, Quality Auto Service, RSC Global Holdings, Reynolds Auto Sales, Tetchy's Collision, and Vintage Automotive. I will entertain a motion for the approval of all 11 of those Class 2 renewal applications, the slate.
So moved.
Moved up by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Counselor Donaco. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the slate of Class 2 renewal applications as approved by the Police Department. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0 carries the motion unanimously. Item 13D is a one-day liquor license application. There is an application, the applicant is seeking a one-day liquor license for a fundraising event at the AmeriCal Civic Center on March 14th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Chines. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the one-day liquor license for the fundraising event to be held on March 14th, 2020. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0. I see the motion carries unanimously. Item 13D2 is another application for a one-day liquor license for a fundraising event at the AmeriCal Civic Center on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2020. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of that one-day license.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of a one-day liquor license for a fundraising event at the AmeriCal on February 14th, 2020. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0 carries the motion unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item number 14. This is a banner request. The applicant, Wakefield Alliance Against Violence, is seeking approval to hang a white ribbon banner on Main Street from March 2nd through March 16th of 2020. This is the annual white ribbon campaign that they have each year. It's a great campaign throughout the town. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of this banner application.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Donaco, seconded by Vice Chair Santos. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the approval of the white ribbon banner from March 2nd through 16th over Main Street. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0. The motion carries unanimously. Item number 15 relates to town-owned land. I'll turn this over to Mr. Mayo and Mr. Mullen.
Mr. Mullen.
Sure, thank you. This has something for everybody. Generally, nothing is duller than the sale of tax title land, but you can really get your teeth into this. This is a parcel of land at 28 Redfield Road that's mostly in Wakefield, but partly in Reading. So that's the first unusual bit. Reading authorized Wakefield to be the lead party in selling the land. We put out the RFP. We took the bids. There were two bids. The high bidder was Cara Mead, who is here with us tonight, and her bid was $151,100. So the Board of Selectmen authorized it. We entered into a purchase and sale agreement in standard form. There were deeds that were executed by both this board and the Reading Board of Selectmen, and we divided up the consideration proportionally. Then it turned out that the structure which is on this land, because there's a house that's sitting on this piece of property, encroaches not only into the setback area, which would be a zoning issue, but all the way over the property line. And it's not an insignificant encroachment. It's tall, it's bigger than I am tall at one end. It's about, I think it's an even 6 feet at its greatest point. So, Ms. Mead, at her own expense, has gone to the ZBA for approval of zoning relief that would allow her to demolish the existing building and to reconstruct it within the lot lines, but with some zoning relief from the setback requirement. I understand that she has obtained that relief. She has also worked with the abutters to make sure that they're okay with her tearing down this building. All of this while we haven't yet transferred the property to her. And so, not unreasonably, she has come to the council to ask for a reduction in the purchase price reflecting the cost of demolition. And her lawyer sent me an estimate that she has received from a contractor of $14,500 to demolish the existing building. So I had two questions immediately about this. One was, is that a fair price? And two, what was the next highest bid? As to the fair price question, I contacted Joe Conway, who told me it would probably cost the town of Wakefield at least that much to demolish this property. So he thought it was a very fair price. As for the next highest bid, there were just two bids. $151,100 was the winning bid. $145,000 was the losing bid. As you can tell from my description, I'm extremely sympathetic to the buyer's case. It seems to me that there are two stopping points here, two alternatives that the council could vote for. And either one of them, I would say, should be contingent on the Reading Selectmen's approval of what you do. We want them to eat a proportionate amount of any reduction. But one, you could, I think, in good conscience, vote to decrease the purchase price by $14,500, given that at this point, I don't know how we would unwind this process. We can't just rebid it. Ms. Mead has invested a lot of money in zoning relief, which she would not benefit from. And again, it's a fair reduction amount. Alternatively, if you were concerned about fairness to the second high bidder, you could reduce the purchase price by $6,000. That would give her something, but it would mean that we would still be getting more in payment from her than was bid by the only other bidder. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions, and again, Ms. Mead is here if you want to speak to her.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen, for that overview. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Mullen or Ms. Mead? Vice Chair Santos.
So what's your recommendation, Tom? And I'm, in all transparency, Kara was my babysitter for my kids when they were little. Although I know nothing about this, the property other than sitting up here. I've never had a conversation with Kara or her family about it. But the demolition price does sound fair. I know that sometimes it costs much more to demolish a house. And because of the encroachment on someone else's property, I'm guessing, it would cost us that much to demolish it as well. So, I mean, because she's, put a lot of money into this already and has been a good faith bargainer throughout the whole process, I certainly don't have a problem with reducing the cost.
Yeah, my recommendation, for what it's worth, would be to reduce it by the full $14,500. I think that's fair.
Yep.
I'd feel, it's not that there are a lot of cases out there like this, but I'd feel very comfortable defending this if somebody with standing actually challenged it. And I have no reason to believe that anybody will.
Great, thank you.
And just one more point that I've neglected to make. There was actually a plot plan out there that showed no encroachment. And this property was refinanced over and over by banks that didn't catch the encroachment. So, everybody involved here, the town, Ms. Mead, everybody was completely innocent until after she had filed her bid. Well after, and after we had signed a PNS.
Okay. No, that sounds great.
Councilor Chines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with your recommendation, Mr. Mullen. It strikes me that we, yes, we had a bid for $145,000 on the table. We don't know where that bidder is today, and we also don't know if that bid would change given the circumstances of the encroachment. And so, my feeling is it's a reasonable price reduction in the case of the work that Ms. Mead's put into the property. But I think also from a town standpoint, I don't feel that we're giving away a material amount of money in terms of the sale proceeds at the end of the day.
I agree.
Do we have any sense, Steve, as to whether the fire department would have any interest in having this as an opportunity for like a training?
Yeah, I don't think so, where it's, we would be on someone else's property, it wouldn't be like really contained. So no, I would say no.
I've been to
Yeah.
those too, and the other houses on the other side have
Yeah.
caught on fire, as well as
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
electrical wires. It rarely goes well. When the houses are that close
In
together.
an actual neighborhood.
Yeah, no, I would say
Yeah.
no.
Also, the price for the demolition also includes the removal,
Wow.
which I think really makes it,
Yep.
I don't think we could match that, but.
We've heard about some removal issues.
And where is that going?
Well, Mr. Mullen, thank you for presenting a very complicated, like, first-year law school question to us. Like an exam
And I
question.
might say that neither Attorney Mullen or I are on the title of this property, so we didn't miss anything.
So to be clear, we would, the motion that we could consider would be to cap the amount at $14,500. So if it were to be more than that, we would cap the
Yes,
town's
to
obligation.
cap the amount of the reduction in the sale price at $14,500, and to do so contingent on the Reading Board of Selectmen's agreement to accept a proportional reduction.
They'll agree.
Sounds good.
Fair enough. So with that, I'll entertain the motion as outlined by Attorney Mullen.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Smith Galvin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the price reduction contingent upon the Reading Board of Selectmen determination as outlined by Town Council Mullen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote of 6-0. Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Welcome to town.
Good luck,
with
Eric.
everything.
Thank you for waiting.
Next item on the agenda is item number 16, and this is simply the setting of a public hearing. We'd be looking to set a public hearing for January 27th of 2020 for a petition for poll locations requested by the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department. So with that, I'll entertain a motion for the setting of that hearing as
So-
described.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos. Seconded by Councilor Chines. Any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is the public hearing. Date setting of January 27th, 2020 at 7:05 PM. All those in favor? Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item number 17 is constituent issues. This is the opportunity for councilors to raise any issues that they've become aware of from constituents. Nothing will be voted on this evening, but these items may or may not end up on a future town council meeting agenda. With that, anyone have any constituent issues to raise? Councilor Chines.
I had my monthly office hours on Saturday, and one of the pieces of feedback that I got was related to snow removal, particularly now that despite the 65-degree weather this weekend, now that we are in winter, one of the individuals that stopped by commented that the bus stop in front of farmland, there was a kind of shoddy job done on snow removal during one of the earlier storms, and there was a request that as a town, we maybe take on some responsibility for that. I think there's an understanding that because there's a bus stop there, the MBTA has some responsibility. However, given that we're already clearing the sidewalk, and it shouldn't be that much additional work for us to make sure we clear to the curbs so that folks have an accessible way of getting onto the bus, would ask that we as a community take that on. The other thing that I'd maybe like to suggest is, as we look at some of the public transit stops, and I can't recall if this came up in any of the envisioned discussions, but that might be a good area for us to think about. Is there a shelter or something else that we could do to, again, given that is a fairly busy bus stop in town, to make sure that there's a space there that is kind of welcoming and accessible for the folks that do use the bus for transportation.
Thank you, Councilor Chines. Anyone else? Councilor Smith Galvin.
So, I had a constituent reach out about the removal of the mailbox at the Lincoln and Smith Street parking lot. So I asked Steve to look into it. The postmaster actually has moved that because I guess the foundation was crumbling, and if you drive by there and notice, it does look a little precarious. So that mailbox at this point is gone by no action of the town or this council. So if people have, Steve, if people have comments about that, do we have a postmaster here for the town?
Postmaster in town. His name is Mr. Lance, but he's in that, but I'm as easy to get
Okay, so
to
if
as
somebody
well,
has
so that's
questions
fine.
about that,
Right.
they can reach out to you. I guess just one or two other things. I believe we have the boat dock will come to us this spring. I think that was a 2-year contract. So I've had some comments around things that are left there and whatnot, but I think that we can probably address those when we address the
Yeah,
contract.
actually, they had a little bit of a change in manager.
Okay.
So we actually have them coming in
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Oh,
A
excellent.
week from tomorrow.
Excellent.
A week from tomorrow, so
Okay.
I can report back on that.
That would be
because,
great.
yeah.
That would be great. And then I know it's winter, but people are very happy that the signs are in at the crosswalk by the high school at Farm Street. The paint has faded already. I think that that's happening in a couple of places near schools, so, I don't know what the solution is there. If we can just keep it going during the winter till we can get something more permanent. We also may need to block a parking space there so that people can see where the crosswalk is at Farm Street. So that's just some
On which one?
ideas.
On Farm
The
Street?
Farm Street, the new one by the high school, which now has 2 great signs. I'd still love to see some strobe lighting and better lighting at crosswalks, in general around town, but I think we're making a really good start with that. Solar powered. Solar powered lights, like they have now in Melrose down by Whole Foods, they're really effective. So maybe that's something we can think about as we're going through the budgets.
Just one piece on the mailboxes. I had seen someone post about that online. I went by on Saturday, and it looks like there are 2 brand-new mailboxes put right by the Bank of America ATM.
Yeah, there are new ones there. I think the issue with this was the drive-up mailbox. So you could go through and you could, the other ones are walk-up. So, the postmaster did say, if that area, because they will never agree to do anything on their nickel, if that area were refurbished, he would consider putting the new one up there again, so I thanked him.
Anyone else?
Can I just follow up
Of
on that? a
course,
little bit?
yes.
So I did reach out to Peter Dion as well, the light department. The light department drop box is still there as a drive-up. The decision to remove that mailbox was not because of the electric vehicle, though the electric vehicle is going in that general area. And perhaps that's an opportunity to do some improvement of the area and reconsider the placement of those, so.
All right. Counselor Donaco.
I have a couple of issues pertaining to the east side of town. So if any of you have driven through the Water Street, Montrose section, some of you may have noticed we've got a new set of traffic lights. Based upon a recommendation by myself when we started talking with the Traffic Advisory Committee in regards to National Grid moving further down Salem Street. They are now at Chapman in Salem, and they've got Salem Street completely shut down. So they're diverting all traffic down Montrose as they anticipated doing. Well, this morning, I'm going to say, because I don't remember seeing it last night when I got home, they put up 3 sets of lights. So there's a set of lights right when you come down Montrose in front of Keats Tree, and there's 2, one on each side, directing traffic on Water Street. This is to slow down or to alleviate the traffic that's now going to be detoured down Walnut Street to Water Street out of Linfield and Saugus, because all the wayfindings are going to tell them that Salem Street's shut down, alternative route. And it's true, because it was a parking lot, and getting out of my street today was a nightmare. I mean, it went almost down to the Saugus line. So it's working, but the signals are not quick, they're slow. That's okay. The complaint that I'm hearing right now is that early in the morning, there was only cars going up and down Montrose. There's a sign erected now saying truck traffic this way to 95. So now there's 18-wheelers going up a very windy road to a heavily residential district, and the people are complaining. I don't know how we handle that. I don't know how that can be corrected. I don't think we can send them into Saugus and tell them to go up Walnut Street, which wouldn't bother me in the least, but I don't know how we correct that at this point.
Yeah, Montrose is a tricky street for 18-wheelers.
Well, there's a sign there saying truck traffic to 95 this way. So it has a lot of people on that street really nervous now. So I don't know how we correct it. I think the traffic signals, if they were adjusted slightly, would be ideal. they would work perfect. Letting people off of Montrose, letting people onto Montrose, let the traffic flow. The other issue was that there was a number of phone calls I received from the people in the Montrose Water Street area of a pungent odor coming from Saugus. And it lasted for, I know, it's the same one,
It's the
probably.
same one for 20 years.
But this was really like ripe for almost a week. It was really bad. And I knew what it was, but when you start getting phone calls, what do you tell them? It's where the wind blows.
Well, when I was on the Board of Health,
Yeah.
it was the old pig farm and
So,
certain smells.
Is
And
there,
Ruth
is there
went
anything that we
out-
can do about that?
No, because, well, I mean, no. Ruth has investigated in the past, and no, there was nothing we could do about it. So if it's pungent all of a sudden, then I would say Board of Health is probably the mechanism we want to go to see if it's, if it's the same type of odor, is it dangerous, is it just uncomfortable for a short amount of time? But Board of Health is where I would send that.
So those are the two issues that I just wanted to make
So
sure.
we can follow up with the Board of Health on that then. Steve, Joe.
I appreciate it, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. So item number 18 then is warrants. This is Counselor Shines with an update on warrant number 19, spanning from November 5th through warrant number 24, dated December 10th.
Yep, so just last Monday, January 6th, I signed warrants 19 through 24, totaling about $11.8 million. Details are in the packet, nothing unusual, mostly salary benefits, debt obligations, enterprise transfers, MWRA fees, nothing sort of unusual or particularly insightful this time. Again, details in the packet.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Counselor Shines? No vote required. All right, thank you for that. Item number 19 is Chairman's comments. This is actually a pretty exciting series of comments to offer tonight. We recently received some updates relative to the Envision Wakefield Downtown Revitalization Program. And as recently as today, Mr. Mayo and I were on the phone with our engineering firm, VHB, understanding what all of the next steps are in the process. So I've put together very short notice, literally finished late this afternoon, just some slides to kind of talk through what we learned last week and what we fleshed out with VHB today through a conference call. But it's some pretty exciting developments that I wanted to share with everyone. So the first of them, the initial concepts that we had proposed, and I'll remind everyone that we had proposed just a basic framework or concepts relative to the project overall. These were not definite plans. They were not set in stone, but they were projects and concepts. Things like crossings, things like parking, safety measures that we had looked into to try to improve the safety of the downtown corridor. And there was also analysis that VHB did relative to that. You may recall we had at prior Envision Wakefield meetings a lot of information about some traffic data, some accident data, all those sorts of things. So based upon that, and after a series of public meetings and forums and stakeholder meetings that we had, we ended up working through with VHB and determining a few different alternatives. Those alternatives were presented before the community. They had been gone through, again, in a general sense. These are not specific, detailed plans, but in a more general sense. And there was certainly a gravitation towards one preferred alternative that tried to preserve as much angled parking as we could. That would be around the library and that area, kind of where the island is. It also address the issues of additional parking that would be in front of Town Hall along Common Street. Most of that would be angled and then painted parallel. Mass DOT, I mentioned a few meetings ago that they were meeting in December. They had that meeting, and Mass DOT performed their initial evaluation of our community input concept plans, and they have approved the advancement of the project. So we've now advanced forward through the process. And so what does that mean? It means things like the framework that's been established relative to this project, the safety and design standards have all been established now, have been defined by Mass DOT, and what we have offered to them as our concept is consistent with their design approval, so it falls within their funding approval, which is a pretty significant step. Again, the concepts presented at the December meeting were based upon the preferred alternative that the community had helped to shape based upon their feedback. This preferred alternative preserves the angled parking that I mentioned and does create the additional parking on Common Street, which is a big plus for us. Based upon, so what does this mean going forward? We now have gained a solid understanding of the design parameters and the framework to efficiently move this project forward to the next phase. Our time will now be spent refining designs, continuing with community input, and working through the designs to make sure that we have a plan that is the best plan that we can achieve for our town, again, driven by community input. But we now have the parameters established, so we know what we can move forward on. We know that we won't be spending our time on concepts that wouldn't be approved. So that's a very important step. Significantly, the project funding estimate as determined by Mass DOT is over $26 million. It's $26,382,000. Now, this is the estimate that was established by Mass DOT. You may recall that at town meeting and throughout the Envision community sessions, we talked about a project we estimated anywhere from like 14 to 15 to 16 million dollars. Mass DOT takes a little bit a different perspective. They look. The 16 million remains the engineering costs as defined by VHB, and that's, so we're pretty confident with that number for the project. In addition, Mass DOT builds in about $10 million in contingencies. So this is things like contingencies, Mass DOT administration, inflation, utilities, relocation, and police details. Things like having to move, say, utility poles, as an example. The police details involved with it. The Mass DOT, to my understanding, and speaking with our design experts, they never want to underfund a project. So they want to make sure that they account for anything and everything that could go wrong with the project. The funding source is significant because the funding source is the federal highway funds that are administered by Mass DOT, the highway division. And so all costs, except for costs associated with design, and I think we've currently approved $771,000 at town meeting for the design of this project. All costs save for design would be covered through this federal funding that flows through the state, which is huge for us. Some notable points to the approval, Mass DOT's approval at this stage. They approved the advancement of the project concept as a whole versus in parts. Oftentimes they may ask that you break up the project into multiple parts. Here they have looked at the entirety of the project and they've approved the project as a whole. We can choose whether we want to phase in aspects of it. No matter what, it's going to be a phased project because we can't do everything all at once. But they have granted their initial approval to move forward based upon what we've proposed, again, in its totality. They've also included Lake Ave and Spalding Street, and that was something that was almost a little bit of a wish in some respects. VHB, our engineering firm, was uncertain about what they would do relative to that. That kind of goes beyond the scope of the main corridor, but it's a great opportunity for us because it's incorporated into the project, and again, they've approved that based upon the framework and standards that we've created. And something to keep in mind as well, we would have paving, utility work, things like replacing water pipes, sewer pipes and the like. We have ADA compliance issues going on, and all of those things would have to be done by the town regardless. So this should allow us the opportunity to wrap them into the project. So for example, when the road is dug up, that's when we'll deal with the new water sewer pipes and the like. So it creates a cost savings for the town at the same time, we're receiving the federal and state funds for that purpose. So what are our next steps? We need to determine more details with the community as we advance and refine these designs. Again, there is not some sort of clear design, that this is what it's going to be. We have a lot of refinement still to happen with the designs. Once we get through that, and in addition, we need to look at identifying street configurations. There had been some talk about how we may reconfigure certain of the streets one way, like Princess being one such example. Then there's all the elements to it, the kit of parts as has been referred to previously. Things like lighting styles, materials, surfaces, where we have bump outs, how we have bump outs, how we make the crossings safer, all those sorts of issues. We will have multiple community and stakeholder forums going forward to go through these to make sure that we refine the design. Again, we have the structure now that has been approved by Mass DOT, so it's important for us to know what our parameters are to work within, but we're then able to have a decent amount of flexibility to make it our own. Again, we'll have multiple community and stakeholder forums, the next of which will be Tuesday, February 11th at 7 p.m. That will be at the AmeriCal. We'll have the whole VHB team there like we've had in the past, going through and talking about where we are project-wise, what we're looking at going forward. Following that, we'll have a 10% design meeting that VHB will be having with Mass DOT. Again, that's after we have more public input. VHB will then meet with Mass DOT, go through any refinements that we have to the design, and then make sure that we're keeping in line with what their parameters are. And then following that 10% design meeting, we'll have further community input, again, additional forums and community sessions to offer further input into the process. After that, we'll get, a lot of people are familiar with a 25% public design meeting. That's where Mass DOT will come here to Wakefield, meet with the community, and discuss the project further and get further community input, common practice of any of these projects. We'll have then further design refinements based upon that community feedback, certainly. And then we'll have two things that are ongoing over the next many number of months. There are monthly meetings with Boston MPO, that's the Metropolitan Planning Organization. That's an organization that is involved with the Transportation Improvement Program process. They really place us, in essence, in the queue. And I'll obviously have updates to town council, and then we would have any votes, as required going forward. So I'll stop there for a second. Does anyone have any questions about that aspect of it? Councilor Chines.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. Just a question on timing. So as we talk about sort of the 10%, the 25% plans and those milestones, what's the sense as to when you get to each of those stages? Just trying to sort of back into, I think, from a public input and comment section, what can kind of folks in town expect in terms of, when they'll have the opportunity to speak and when sort of the project will move forward in each of those milestones?
Right. Well, the next will certainly be February 11th, because that will be before the 10% design meeting. As far as the timeline, it's rather fluid because it depends upon where we are with design and input. There's very limited requirements at this point for us relative to Mass DOT. We have to make sure that we've secured the design and the design funding. We have to deal with any environmental issues, which we don't anticipate there being any, and we have to deal with any right-of-way issues, and we don't anticipate there being any. So those are really like the three prongs to it.
I guess I'm not looking for a specific date, but just, again, trying to understand, does it take a year to get to a 25% design phase? Does it take 6 months? Does it take 18 months? Do we have sort of a rough sense of what the glide path looks like?
Yeah, my understanding is that we'll be at the 10% design phase, I think it's estimated within six months, with the hope of trying to accelerate that, again, depending on where we are design-wise. Then from there, a lot of it is driven by the community input and where we are in terms of our design of the project. Mind you, VHB has been working on this project for quite some time, and we've had a number of public forums already, so a lot of these concepts are not new. This is more of a refinement piece. And then we'll get to the 25% design, and then from there, I think at that point we'll have a better sense of where we fall in the queue. Mm-hmm. But even with that, once we get into the queue with the Boston MPO, we have the opportunity, if we're design ready, if we're shovel ready, to jump the line of other projects that may be ahead of us but are not ready. Mm-hmm. And in speaking with VHB, that's often the case. A lot of projects will have good intentions but not be able to execute at a particular time. So you then can jump the line. We could even potentially begin, say, one segment of it, and then you keep moving forward. So there's a lot of opportunity there. It's a fluid timeline, and a lot of it will depend on where we are, where we feel like we're shovel-ready and design completed. A lot of that will depend on the community input that gets us there.
Got it.
Because that's such an important
But
piece.
at least 10% we're thinking is about a 6
About
month
a six-
process
about
from
a
today,
6 month.
and then there's presumably several months after that we go from 10 to 25,
Correct.
and then after that, who knows where we are, given all the other external variables that we have to look at.
Exactly, and even with 25, keep in mind that even at 90%, you're still refining design. And so it's not like 25 is the be-all, end-all, it's literally the 25%. So if we find that we want to try to, still modify certain aspects of it, as long as we're falling within those parameters, that's something that we can be doing. So I think it's important that the public understand that this is a work in progress, will continue to be a work in progress for the next number of months. But we need to have some sort of structure going forward, because otherwise we can't move through and get approvals and the like. So that's where we're at. That's our stage. And coupled with that, I know that we did get word from Mr. Mayo about this last week, that we also have received a grant from the Complete Streets program in the amount of $378,571. This is a fantastic grant that we received, especially as the town had been previously rejected. We had been denied the grant previously, and this is a really great opportunity for us to, I had mentioned a meeting or two ago, potentially trying to peel off some of the Albion Street elements and do those in advance under Complete Streets. This allows us to do that now. This is actually a very accelerated timeline. It should be done by fall 2020 from a grant perspective. But these funds would be directed to the Albion Street corridor. What that means is anything that will improve, the safety and aesthetics, basically. So new sidewalks, ADA compliance, crosswalks that are, look for one now, good luck. Bump outs and paving elements as well. Our goal would be to try to make this Albion Street corridor almost like a live model of what the broader, project will look like. And this allows us a really unique opportunity to do that. So this is fast-tracked money that needs to be spent. We're already working through engineering on that. The Albion Street corridor was actually received the least amount of comments because we had so many limitations. You can only have the sidewalk so wide. We already have painted parallel parking there. We have no crosswalks. We need ADA compliance, all the sorts of obvious things. So there weren't a lot of elements that we could be particularly creative on. That's not to say that we can't do things like figure out planters and lighting and all the sorts of elements and perhaps integrate them into this design. But at a minimum, we're able to use these funds, and I think it will be a good gateway. Steve and I have been working very hard on this, especially the last few months. We met with and then invited out the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, and we walked him down Albion Street, conveniently, I think, within the last few months, Steve.
Yep.
And we showed him exactly the potential. We showed him, explained to him how since 2015 we've looked at trying to have transit-oriented development, all the sorts of things that are in line with what the state's looking to do going forward. So I feel very fortunate for that award of funds as well, and the combination of the 26 plus nearly 380,000 in that case of ready funds that can be used right away is great because it accelerates that aspect of the project. To your point, Councilor Chines, again, the overall project timeline is really driven in large part by several factors. Our project design readiness, the sooner we have a design that we can promote, the better position will be to try to make sure that we're not just on the tip list, but also jumping others on the tip list to move us forward. And the Albion Street work, again, is expected in the next several months. I believe that the estimate from our engineer was by fall of 2020, Mr. Mayo. I believe.
Yeah, I think that, and actually, that's part of that program. You have to use
It's
that
the
money quickly.
requirement.
Yeah.
So it may not be everything that we want to be doing on Albion Street, but it's a good chunk to get us there. Imagine like bump outs, crosswalks, all the sorts of things we don't currently have there. That'll be awesome. Again, our next community forum will be Tuesday, February 11th at 7 p.m. at the AmeriCal. And for those watching at home, if you go into the town's website, on the main page, there's the Envision Wakefield Downtown Revitalization box. You can check on that. You can see the preferred alternative and a lot of other information about that. And there will be plenty more information flow going forward with that. So I think I've already said too much.
That's awesome.
Any other questions on that? I think it's an exciting project. I'm really excited about both components to this, and I think we're really well positioned to do some really great stuff. All right. So moving on, the next item on our agenda is matters not anticipated for the agenda. These are matters that have come up in the last 48 hours and prohibiting us from having the requisite public notice requirements. Does anyone have any? All right, seeing none. Item 21 is acknowledgements and announcements. If anyone has an announcement or acknowledgement.
Quick.
Yes.
I must have signed up for this, but I was really excited to see the winter newsletter in my mailbox today from the town of Wakefield. And it had great information in it with regard to details about our tax rates, the MSBA discussion with the new high school, a great program of environmental awareness that's going on through the grade schools, I'm sorry. Resident resources. So if you go to wakefield.mass.ma.us and click on Get Town News, you can sign up for this. It's a quarterly newsletter. It had a bunch of information. There's an upcoming special election on February 4th. But it had some excellent information about things that we've been doing in the town, very easy to access material. And with regards to the Albion Street corridor, I was on the last walkabout where we got denied. So it's really nice to see that we just kept at it and we got this. So, and I think what you said about using it as a selling point for the rest of the development to get folks excited, I think will be great. So, good.
Councilor Chines.
Thank you. First of all, echo the comments on the newsletter. It also went out, if anyone got their water and sewer bill today, it was in that as well, which was great to see, but really did look excellent, and congratulations and thank you to Jen McDonald for clearly her stamp on that document. Just want to mention a couple of things. Superintendent Lyons is doing his annual State of the Schools presentation this Wednesday at 6:30 at the Galvin. They really do a nice job with that. I've gone for the last several years, and both Superintendent Lyons and his predecessor, I think, really did a great job of talking about the instructional mission of the schools, how that relates to the work that they're doing in the coming years, and so encourage folks to attend that. I believe that that's also broadcast on the WCAT or recorded. I might be wrong on that, but certainly worth paying some attention to. Rich Greif, when he was here with the Human Rights Commission, did mention the Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King celebration on Monday, which is fantastic. I did just want to highlight the individuals and organization that are being recognized this year, for their great work. The Resident Award is going to Elizabeth Freeman. The student recognition to Jasmine Voigt, and then the Wakefield Food Pantry for their great work. Very, very well deserving, and it'll be exciting to see them recognized on Monday. And finally, coming up just before then, wanted to give a shout out to the Wakefield High School Music Department. The a cappella night is this Saturday at 7 o'clock. Folks are looking for something to do, great entertainment. They always do a nice job, so hope folks can make it there.
Thank you, Councilor Chines. Anyone else? Councilor Butt.
To echo everything that Ann and Jonathan said, congratulations, Steve and Jen and your team on the town newsletter. I know we'd been talking about it for a while, so thank you for making that happen. And also reminder about Monday and MLK Day. We all, most of us were there the first one 4 years ago, so it's such a great tradition. Just some other updates happening to be on the lookout for. So we talked a lot about great volunteers today. We have a great Committee of the Sweetser lecture series. They have finalized their calendar for this upcoming year, so just a reminder to be on the lookout. Those start March, April, May. One other update from 2019 carrying over into this year is last December. I'm looking at Steve. Last December, we had our first info session about the community garden. 20 people came out in a snowstorm to talk about community gardens. We'll be scheduling a second one where we took all the information, had some really great dialogue about that. So if you have any thoughts about our community garden that we will break ground in this spring, reach out to myself or to Steve. And then last, as we talk about constituent issues, I just wanted to close a loop on something I had mentioned here a couple of months ago during farmer market season, so over the summer, about a constituent who came up to me and talked about a walk pedestrian light that was 7 seconds, and Steve and his team looked into it, and it was supposed to be 28 seconds. It was malfunctioned, and she emailed me this weekend and said she was going for a run, and it was 28 seconds, so she appreciated it being fixed, but I thought that was good. Sometimes we don't hear about the successes, so I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Councilor Butt. Councilor Smith-Galvin.
Most people have said everything I was going to say, but two events coming up. The first, on January 23rd, the Environmental Sustainability Committee is doing what we're calling community drop-in time. So just people can drop in anytime from 7 to 9. We'll have a couple of areas set up to just talk about what we're doing, what's happening in the schools that's highlighted in the newsletter, some things that we're collaborating with the Municipal Vulnerability and Resiliency Program, the Envision Resiliency Program, and a little bit of just talking about recycling and composting and trash. It's very early, but there's going to be more discussions on that. And just if anybody wants to share some ideas about what they would like to see the Environmental Sustainability Committee. It's got a little bit of kind of an office hours for that committee. So that's January 23rd from 7 to 9 at the AmeriCal. Somewhat connected, but not really. But Sunrise Wakefield. Sunrise is a youth movement that is very big nationwide, and some of our youth in town I'm really excited to see. I know we're going to have some exciting things coming up with youth over the next couple of weeks, but some of the youth, in fact, some that serve on the Environmental Sustainability Committee, are independently putting together a Sunrise Wakefield group, and they're meeting on January 25th at the Albion Cultural Center. So I believe there's some information on that on Facebook. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Smith-Galvin. Just echoing what some others have said already, here's...
No, I can go after you.
Okay. So here is the newsletter that has come together. I want to give a special shout out to Councilor Smith-Galvin. I know I spoke with her about this many months ago, and you've really been one of the champions of this. So thank you, and thank you to Jen McDonald and Mr. Mail's office. It looks great. Again, to your point, it came out in the water bills probably received today, if not tomorrow. A lot of helpful information. This is our starting point, and one of our goals, I think, as a body was to get more information out in different forms, and our hope is that this is currently a quarterly, maybe it'll become a monthly, and we'll see from there. And to Vice Chair Santos' point, having the availability to have it in your inbox is so nice. It's
with links that you can.
It's a really interactive newsletter, which is great. So thank you to everyone for your hard work on that. With that, I think I've spoken plenty on the Envision project. The Envision Wakefield meeting again will be Tuesday, February 11th at 7 p.m. at the AmeriCal Civic Center. We invite you to come out and get the latest updates. And if you can't make it, that's okay. We'll have other forums as well, and this will be an interactive process for the next number of months to come. So finally, I'll turn it over to Mr. Mayo for any comments he may have.
Just very quickly, I wanted to congratulate the Wakefield Independence Day Committee. They put on a character, I'm saying not a character breakfast, but a character event, and they had face painting, and they had interaction with some of the characters that marched in the parade. And what a great event it was. I saw, many young people there really enjoying themselves, including my grandson, who had a great time there. I did not do so good in Simon Says, or Captain Says, but I gotta say, whoever played Captain Jack looked like Captain Jack Sparrow was unbelievable. I mean, it just was, and I think it was kind of a new event. We go to a lot of events and fundraisers, so kudos to Brian Fox and his group, because they did a great job.
That's it. Anyone else? All right, so our next town council meeting will be January 27th at 7 PM here from WCAT, unless we have need for executive session. That would move it a half hour early. This is our first meeting of the year and our first meeting of the new decade. And I know that we can all take a lot of pride in what we've done so far as a body. We each bring unique talents and skill sets here, and I'm looking forward to a lot of great things to come in the decade ahead. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Santos, seconded by Councilor Donaco. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I gaveled this meeting closed. Thank you for watching, and good night.